I would like to call the Committee on Budget to be reconvened from Monday 9 a.m. to Thursday, March 14, 2024 a.m. I would like to welcome our committee members, Councilmember Kia Aina, Councilmember Singh, Councilmember Toba, and welcome Councilmember Tupola to the Committee on Budget. There's no members participating remotely by video conference. On Monday, March 11, 2024, the committee has recessed to allow further discussion agenda item number 3. The committee has reconvened today to hear the departmental presentations from the Honolulu Fire Department, the Honolulu Emergency Services Department, and the Honolulu Police Department. For your information, and I'd also like to welcome Committee Vice Chair Wire and Councilmember Okimoto. For your information, public testimony was closed and no further testimony will be taken today. Also, the committee concluded all other items on the agenda. Before we begin, we do have our normal procedural announcements. If and when there is a council member participating remotely outside of the council chamber in accordance with section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audio-visual contact with that council member, and we will not be able to reconvene until re-establish contact. Therefore, I will ask that council member to please then announce beforehand if they will be voluntarily signing out. And I'll repeat it if there is any. With that, written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. Members, we are back on agenda item number 3, which is the Executive Capital and Operating Budget Review. The order that I have it in is not the order that is on my script, so I'm going to do it off of my memory. That we have at Honolulu Fire Department, then we have Emergency Services Department and Honolulu Police Department. Please note that the Honolulu Fire Department Departmental Communication is 156, Emergency Services is D155, and the Honolulu Police Department is D153. And with that, we will now start with our Honolulu Fire Department.
Aloha, good morning. Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Wire, council members, I'm Kalani Hao, Fire Chief of the Honolulu Fire Department. I would like to thank you for this opportunity for us to present our fiscal year 25 budget request. We'll start off with our operating budget. Okay, go ahead, Mike. This slide shows our character of expenditures. As you see, it's an overall increase of 6.2%, and the breakdown between salaries, current expenses, and equipment. Our salary increases is due to CBAs, is CBA related, and also CBA catch-up from previous fiscal years. Certain salary object codes were not increased along with across-the-board increases. Our current expenses is due to increased cost, goods and services, and our equipment increase for additional equipment for our personnel. Next slide, please. As you can see the breakdown by activity on this of that 6.2%, and it's mainly, you can see it's in our fire operations, and the increase in fire operations is also 6.2%, just same as our overall increase from 24 to 25. This next slide is the source of our funds. This comes from the general fund and represents that 6.2% increase. This next slide is our budget issue. We submitted multiple budget issues, but we were happy to get awarded another position, well, hopefully with your approval, and this is to help with our procurement. In 2016, they changed the small purchasing threshold from 5,000 to 25, and we've seen a huge increase in execution of small purchases over the years. So back in 2016, we were at a rate of about approximately 250 small purchases a year. Now we're up to 600, and this is all without a dedicated procurement section. Next slide. Next slide represents our position count and does reflect that one additional budget issue for that position, up from 1189.5 to 1190.5. Next slide. Next is to our vacancies, our non-uniform vacancies. We currently have 11 at this time as of January 31st, but we did fill one, so we have 10. And we look forward to filling these as soon as we can by the end of the fiscal year and into fiscal year 25. Next slide. Our vacant positions sits at 129. I think this can be a little misleading because it doesn't account for all of the recruits that we have in class. So right now we have 66 recruits, and we are in processing 40 to actually start towards at the beginning of the fiscal year to hire another 40. So we basically are going to be starting the fiscal year at approximately 23 vacancies for our uniform members. Our overtime, the increase from 24 to 25 is 870. It's a 5.3% increase. And again, it is largely due to the CBA increases. Next slide is the breakdown of that 870,000. And you can see again, the bulk of it comes from our fire operations. Next slide is our sources of revenue. We have our licenses and permitting. You're going to see our estimated has been increased from 488,000 in our license and permitting to upwards of 916. That is due to a 100% increase in the fees for our fireworks and fire code type of licenses and certifications. Intergovernmental revenue is projected to be the same, as well as charges for services is relatively going to be flat. Next slide. I wanted to just bring up something that we don't have in our PowerPoint. We do seek ways to enhance our funding through other grants, so we can present you with that information if you have any further questions through FEMA, Homeland Security, earmark funds. Capital improvement. This first slide shows our $4.5 million. That's the same allotment that we've been given over the last several years and is for our station maintenance and upkeep. The next two slides will show the breakdown of that $4.5 million, and we have projects in each of the council districts to, again, maintain our fire stations. Go to the next slide. And these two here on this slide is for our major projects with our Pearl City Fire Station and our Wailua Fire Station. We're still trying to secure the land. So we've been giving the monies for fiscal year 25 to secure those properties. Both are relatively harder to, they need to be subdivided, so the process is taking us a little longer, but we are working with the landowners to get that done. And finally, our equipment request. This is to replace our larger items, our apparatuses and equipment for $7.9 million. You can see 3 engine apparatus, a tower, a crew cab truck, two trucks, and a sport utility vehicle and a utility vehicle that we use to go up in the mountainous areas. And that concludes our budget. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to.
Thank you. I would also like to welcome Councilmember Dos Santos Tam to the meeting. First up, thank you, Chief. First up, we have Committee Vice Chair Wire, followed by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina.
Mahalo, Chair. And thank you, Chief, for the presentation and for your team as well, all the work everyone's doing. So just wanted to make sure I understood. So the F1 FTE reflected in the budget book that's being added, that's the planner 4 position?
That's strictly for procurement. That's going to help us out with procurement, as I stated.
Okay. You said about 600 procurements a year, or do you think
That's
that'll
just
go?
for small purchases alone, but we have P cards and larger master agreement type of transactions that we do every year.
Okay. So you're saying that 600 includes all the transactions? Or I don't know if the bigger ones, but for the small purchases, or there's other?
Only for the SPs.
Okay.
Those that are 25,000 and lower.
Okay. Is there other work that the planner for would be doing, or it'd be purely focusing on bringing down or fulfilling those small purchase orders?
I'm sure, I think for the most part, they will be helping us do the orders. Right now, we have uniform members that is splitting between their duties to make sure all of these transactions get completed.
Okay.
It's quite a lot. You have to get all these quotes and manage all of these. It's a lot of paperwork and to get this done.
Do you know about how many full-time members have been working on it, just off the top of your head?
I think we all share the load. I think,
Okay.
you know, in every different section, maybe I would say about 10 to 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's on top of doing their normal duties.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good to know, because we definitely don't want to be distracting folks in their other duties. Well, given that it's 10 to 15 people, do we think one position is sufficient, or?
I think we would still allow people to do it because it's a good learning experience and understanding what is required to execute a budget, but it would be at a lower scope. That's our hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Say.
Aloha, Chief. I have no questions. I fully support your and your leadership team's handling of the Hawaii Fire Department. You know, my staff and I work closely with your office as well as HPD, so I just want to make sure that you guys have all of the resources necessary for the upcoming fiscal years. I did want to thank you specifically for the improvements you put in the CIP budget for Kaneohe Fire Station, as well as improvements at Waimanalo Fire Station. And of course, I appreciate your willingness to identify when lands that HFD has that is no longer needed, you work with others to determine how it could be better utilized. And more specifically, you and I had a conversation about Ben Parker Elementary School in Kaneohe. I've heard from countless of parents, especially in the soccer leagues, who are concerned about the lack of fields. And I've introduced a resolution to call for the Department of Parks and Rec to request more fields. But having said that, you have 2 acres of land that is conducive for a lot of children in Kaneohe to be able to utilize it. So I'm pleased that you work to transfer it to Parks and Rec. And I've already talked to Director Thielen, and they're working with DLM. So hopefully you're going to see a lot of the kids that are playing on the DOE lands to go and play on the lands that you guys are giving over. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that comment, Council Vice Chair. Next up, we have Councilmember Say, followed by Councilmember Okimoto.
Chief, on behalf of the residents of Oahu, what is CBA?
Oh,
I'm sorry, collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, that's pay raises for our officers. Some of our residents that attend the neighborhood boards thought CBA stood for City Budget Accounting, which is not collective bargaining. So I'm happy that you're educating the general populace at this point in time who are listening to Olelo. And the next question is any programs that you'll be sharing with the general public in regards to what HFD has done in regards to addressing wildfires?
We've been working with all of our partners on the federal, state, and other county levels to identify high-risk areas. The mayor has created a working group, and we've been meeting twice a month to make sure that we have plans to ensure that, again, risks are identified and assessed, and then working with the various groups. With HPD and DEM, we're really working hard on the notification piece. When a wildland occurs, is one of the big things that is concerning to the community is how we're going to be notified if they need to evacuate and or anything else. So again, we've been working diligently to address everything wildland related.
And one request, did the department make a request for increase in the new prototypes of helicopters that can carry more water, bucket water?
We do have our twin engine helicopter that we were funded last fiscal year, and we are hopefully going to get it by the end of the calendar year or early next calendar year. And that twin engine helicopter has an increased capability. Our current single engine helicopters only has a 100-gallon capacity for their bucket. This one triples it at 300.
So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to say thank you to the fire stations that are in District 5, from Makiki to Makali to Waikiki to Palolo to Manoa. You're going to have one in Kakako also? Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilmember Okimoto, followed by Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Chief Hao. I think Councilmember Say actually asked one of my main questions, but I'll expound on it. I just want to thank you, first of all, for your report. I appreciate the detailed and organized manner in which your report was provided. Mahalo also for keeping your vacancies low. It's nice to see that you have the recruiting class coming through. And another one following up. But I wanted to follow up on several things. One was the helicopter. And you just shared that it's coming. The report says fall of 2024. Do you have a concrete timeline for when the helicopter will arrive?
We're still working out the details with the vendor at this time. We put in for an amendment. We wanted to have some changes, so we're working with purchasing to get those minor details fixed. So I cannot give you an exact timeline. It's probably in a window sometime during the winter, my hope.
Okay. No, that's good to know. I agree. I think after the wildfires, the need to be prepared for future events is something on the minds of everybody. I'm thinking forward, because we know that in government things take longer to do. And if you had it your way, if we had things our way, we'd do things in a more efficient manner. But moving forward, do we have a plan to acquire another engine? Because I think when we last met and you guys came to us and shared the information about the current helicopters, and I saw them in my home district, that they are getting more out, they are getting older. So do we have plans to prepare for the future?
That is correct. So we have a refurbishment plan. So we have 3 single-engine helicopters. So one is still being maintained, so we can take one out. In a perfect world, we would like to see our fleet be 2 of the twin-engine helicopters and 2 of the singles. So, I mean, in some point in time, not in the very near future, but somewhere within the next 10 years or so, we would probably want to get a second twin-engine helicopter, because the lifespan is relatively over 20 years. So we don't want to get it too early, and we're okay with the fleet right now. Yeah, we have to kind of plan that out.
And one thing I learned in the process of the Mililani Malco wildfires is that while they were pretty much all night working on that fire, they still had to do rescues that were coming in at the same time. So that's when I realized, we really need to be prepared and make sure that the department has the resources, because you weren't just dealing with the fire, you were actually dealing with rescues at the same time.
That is correct. And there are times when helicopters are fighting brush fires and they have to peel off to address other rescue calls.
Mm-hmm. And with the pilot restrictions and everything. So I'm glad that you're thinking ahead, and I'm sure I'll follow up with you to see the status. Dealing with other apparatuses, you mentioned in your report, and I saw in the written report, about 3 fire trucks, the 3 compressed air foam system fire trucks, noting that we have discussions this week on procurement of vehicles. So this past week in budget, we've talked about in other departments the challenges and the timelines of getting the equipment and the vehicles that they need. Could you please share what HFD's procedures plans are for these 3? You have, 40, how many stations do we have?
We have 43 stations,
43
approximately
stations.
63 frontline apparatuses. And you're correct, there's challenges. The build times went pre-COVID from 1 year build time. Now it's exceeding 1,000 days. So cost and time has gone up tremendously. Even vendors that would be in our market, is difficult for the vendors. So our vendors is very few that wants to be in our market. So that's another challenge that it poses. So when we put out for bid, I would say last year in some solicitations we had 0 bidders because of the uncertainty that these vendors would be facing with timelines. So we had to really loosen the language in the solicitation to allow for these longer build times.
I think I would encourage, I challenge some of the other departments, the same thing, DFM, probably go back to ENV, because at the end of the day, regardless of what's happening on the back end, our people need the services. So anything we can do on the proactive side, that we can prepare for things, because knowing that things are taking longer, what I would hate is, we can't fulfill the public safety needs because of procurement or something dealing with the supply. So I'll continue to follow up with you on that, because I would like to know what the plan is. You have 3 coming up, and what was the date for those 3? I know it's in your report this year. These 3 are supposed to be coming in when?
We have one that is on order. The other one, we're waiting for that solicitation to be completed for the previous fiscal year monies.
And so the plan is to do 1 a year, or is it like 3 a year, or how does that
Well, our
work?
plan is, once we get this current solicitation done before June 30th, is to write language within the contract. So as soon as the monies become available in fiscal year 25, should we get given the monies for these apparatuses here in the budget, then we're going to execute. So we're going to pretty much be almost a double order coming in.
A double order,
Yeah.
okay. Because the fire trucks usually, I mean, we mentioned the helicopters, but the trucks usually, the lifespan of that is about how long?
12 to 15 years.
12 to 15 years. And so do you have some that are past that at this point?
We have some that are getting there. So we have to think out of the box. We're working with our mechanic shop to see what we can do to kind of prolong the life. There's things we have to do on the front end, being more proactive. But again, like everyone else, we're having issues with the 11 vacancies that I mentioned. We have 5 within our mechanic shop.
Oh, okay.
So you see, that's some of the challenges that we have. So we're trying to figure out creative ways to attract mechanics, working with HCC and other agencies to see if we can have people want to come in and work in those areas with us.
Okay, thank you for doing that. And you segued into my next part. You mentioned the mechanic shop. So I noticed, which I didn't realize until I read into again, thank you for your report. It was very informative. You have a radio shop, and then the radio system, and even the mechanic shop. I noticed that in these areas, HFD is collaborating or assisting with other departments or agencies. For example, with your radio shop that has only 4 full-time employees, you provide support island-wide for JTMC, DEM, HESD, HPD, DLNR, it goes on, Coast Guard, DITA, and even HART. And then the radio system, you provide support for DDC, a lot of other city offices, DFM, DFR. The mechanical shop that has 22 FTEs, you also help with HPD. So I was kind of surprised to see that your department is servicing so much more of the city. What is the extent of your collaboration or your assistance? And are you provided with the adequate resources to do that? I actually didn't realize that HFD was providing support. So if you could explain, how much support are you providing, and do you have the adequate resources to do that?
I would have to ask my administrative services. Mechanic shop. Yeah, sorry. Introduce yourself.
Good morning, Chair Cordero, council members. Chris Cabasa, Battalion Chief at our Administrative Services Department. Our mechanic shop currently supports HPD with their larger vehicles whenever they need assistance. So, we are open to assist other agencies if need be. But primarily, our mechanic shop focuses on our apparatuses, our auxiliary vehicles, and again, HPD and their heavy equipment or bigger vehicles.
And Chief Hao just mentioned that you guys have vacancies in this part right now, in this department or this shop right now, in the mechanic shop. So are you adequate in your manpower and resources? Because you guys have 43 plus, or you mentioned more than 43 trucks.
We have close to 70 frontline vehicles. We have, again, auxiliary vehicles that total about 100. So as far as manpower and resources within a mechanic shop, we could definitely use more positions. However, we know that creating positions but not filling them is not the solution. The solution is to fill the vacancies that we do have. But at the same time, we do need more. And it is being a little more challenging to recruit, these trade workers, mechanics, heavy equipment mechanics. But it's tough because with the private sector, the competitiveness, it's tough to bring them in. So we like to at least offset that with a good working environment, and that's the people that we have, so.
Okay. And regarding the radio systems, again, what is the extent of what the department is doing to help out with a multitude of other city departments and offices?
The current staff is adequate at this time, yeah.
What do they do? I actually am curious.
All of the radios, the portable radios,
Just devices.
the devices.
So they're dealing with maintaining the devices.
We have a big project that we're transferring to the digital, the P25. So it's just converting those over and ensuring that the city agencies all are operating on the same system. So once that big, large project is done, they'll have to do some maintenance. But for now, that's the extent of it. And
Okay.
I mean, more positions would be beneficial, but we understand the challenges.
Okay.
I can get more information.
Really, I was going to ask if there's anything that we could do to assist, because I was surprised to see how much you're helping outside of your department.
Right. I can get you more detailed information
Okay.
that I may not have at this time.
And lastly, thank you, Chair, for letting me ask this last question. I'm going to follow up. You mentioned the Pro City Fire Station, and I did see in here the training and research facilities. I know in our conversations we talked about the consistency of how you are able to get recruit classes in, and I look forward to meeting with them, working with you on the side. If you could just kind of share what is the status of the training facilities, and I do want to thank you for the work that you've been doing on my Pro City Station, but if you could also give an update on that. So are the training facilities with these new recruits, because you've been successful in having recruit classes, are they sufficient? And again, the Pro City Station.
Well, our training center is a very busy place. We have incumbent training as well as recruit training. So if you've ever been to our training center, it looks like a container city. We're just making do with the land that we do have. Upcoming in our 6-year CIP plan, we do have monies allocated to refurbish our tower. Right now, we're actually doing work as we speak on the asphalt area because it gets a lot of use. If you ask me, yes, we would like to have more space for training and facilities. But we're doing our best to make do with what we have as far as for the training.
I've been to prior to me being in the city council, I had visited the HPD one, and I know that's a nice facility. So hopefully what we can do is work with you, and as I go and visit, to see what can be done for the new recruits coming through the fire department as well.
Thank you.
And then for the Pro City Fire Station, we've met, I think maybe a month or so ago or a few weeks ago. Has anything changed in the status of that project?
Well, we actually got DLM and DDC all on board, and with the funding that you see in our CIP. Again, I mentioned that this is a subdivision to get these properties, so that's where we're at right now. We're moving forward with it, and we're hoping that we can kind of get this done as soon as possible. So it's in DLM's court right now.
Great. And like I told you, I follow up with all these people. I will continue to, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and for your group. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much. Aloha, Chief. Good morning.
Morning.
Quick question. So for the overtime, it's not a breakout of the 156 million. It's separate from that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you mention grants, what specifically would it be for personnel, equipment, and to the tune of how much money for the various grants that you may be pursuing?
Well, we pursue on an annual basis grants from FEMA, Homeland Security. So if I go back to 2021, we were awarded approximately 2.4 million, to 22, 1.8 million. In 23, we're pending approvals for approximately, let me see, $6.5 million, and I'm sorry, excuse me, 5.4, and approximately $6 million in 2024. So all is pending, and this is FEMA grants, Homeland Security, USDA Community Wildfire Defense grants, some earmarks funds from Representative Case, and some earmark projects from Senator Schatz. So I have a breakdown, and I can provide you with that, what we're looking
That'd be great. And I guess I'm asking because we're always wondering, if the departments are trying to be self-sufficient, chase after their own funding. So with the $6 million being about the highest that you guys have gotten, are we on the low end, on the high end of what maybe local municipalities are getting for grants?
I cannot speak to the other municipalities, but we have a grant manager, and we've been always constantly. She just came back from a conference to figure out if there's more opportunities that we can apply for. And that's something that we don't shy away. The difficult part is with our grants is because for facilities and or purchasing of our apparatus is because of the build times and it takes so long. That kind of grants would probably make it a little more difficult for us to execute and meet the grant timelines.
Well, the positive is you have a grant manager, so that's step one, right? Is that they can
Yes.
chase it down, manage your grant, see if you can stay within the timelines to receive the funding. That's great. My next question is the emergency generator listed on your CIP for Waianae Station to be used while there's renovations, or when it's finished, the generator is needed then?
It's actually, my understanding is operational, so they'll just swap it out at that time.
And what is the timeline we can expect on the reopening for the Waianae Station?
We were starting to move in, but there was some issues with the contract that we have to take care of. Actually just came on our plate yesterday that there was some leaks that we have to go back and work with the contractor. So it was scheduled to be started yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought we were closed, so are you saying hopefully before
we may have
summer?
to wait to address, I don't want our personnel to move in if we have to address some things with the contractors.
Understood. Yeah, and thank you for your partnership with DOT on the trimming. I tell you what, there are places on the west side I never ever did see before. Now it's trimmed and people are like, what is that? I mean, really unidentifiable because we've never had it trimmed before. So that partnership is invaluable, something your department could have never done, but very preventative. And that's where we need to be in any emergency situation. So thank you, Chief.
Yeah, we're very grateful that the state and Ed Sniffen has been very aggressive in helping us out. So we're appreciative of that.
Yes, thank you to Ed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Tupola. Next up, I guess my turn. May I ask that you please introduce your team that you have with you today?
Oh, I have my whole gang. I have Battalion Chief Michael Jones. Stand up, you guys. Battalion Chief Christopher Cabasa. Battalion Chief Ricardo Yost. Battalion Chief J.C. Bish. Battalion Chief Matt Nakapuahi. Assistant Chief Craig Uchimura. Assistant Chief Joseph Costilla. Assistant Chief Kevin Mokulehua. And Assistant Chief Reed Yoshida. And our Deputy Fire Chief is hiding in the back, Jason Samala.
Thank you very much. And then yourself.
That's myself.
Okay, thank you very much for that. My next question, of course, I have the airport and the training center in my district, and we've had discussions about the HFD fire, the hangar, and for the updates on that. I know that we are still looking to utilize the HPD. And HPD, I forgot what type of funding would be used
It's
for
the
that.
asset forfeiture
The asset
funding.
forfeiture.
Correct, and that is $5 million, if I'm not mistaken, and that's only going to be used on the planning phase. So in our CIP plan, we have it scheduled for, is it fiscal year 26 and 27?
Okay.
It's all scheduled out. And right now, we are in negotiation with the University of Hawaii and the state for us to migrate over to Kalaeloa. We were working out a lease agreement to move our helicopters as well as with HPD. We have a 5-year lease that we're hoping to get done within the next month. And then we're going to move our air operations over to Kalaeloa so that project near the airport can begin.
Okay, so the HPD asset forfeiture will show up either in your budget or HPD's budget?
I think it will show up in PD's budget.
In PD's
I'm sorry,
budget.
I can
And then
confirm that.
also, since it's just for planning, then where would the construction, design, and other necessary CIP funding be housed under? Would it
I
be
think
then
it'll
under
be housed under HFD.
HFD?
Correct.
Okay. And so the timeline, once again, would probably be for the movement to Kalaeloa and then the plan, design, and construction of everything. What would the timeline be?
To transition over, I would say we get the lease agreement over the next 6 months or so. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to get back with my team. But I guess the planning phase and asset forfeiture funds are available for planning, and that would be, once the project gets handed over to DDC, they would be able to, I guess, provide a better timeline. I can get back to you with more information on that.
Thank you. And this is not a budget question, but this is relating to when I got to visit the training center again. I got to go into the room where we used to have the accommodation ceremonies for like our neighbors that do exceptional assistance for saving persons' lives. But do we do that in the Kakako? Your headquarters now, or do we still do the accommodation ceremonies out at the training
It
center?
all depends on the amount of people
amount of
that we
people.
have and whatever
okay.
the venue can accommodate. If we can do it here, we'll probably do it at our headquarters.
Oh, okay. Okay. I do like to do it at the training center just because it's my district. But anyway, I know I understand that it's dependent on the people. Okay. I also understand that the community online data for emergency services, or I don't know how you say it, codes or something, is going to be upgraded to a 2.0 version of it. And I was wondering if it's coming out from, well, first off, I was wondering the lifespan of a code's version, like before being upgraded to the next upgraded version.
Actually, it's kind of a living program that we've been
okay.
updating all the time. So I think this latest one is to probably, the coding is going to be updated, but it's probably the same functionalities are going to, nothing changes in the front half.
Okay. And our DIT, do they help you with that type of software, or is it all in-house with each?
We have a contractor that completes that for us.
Got it. And so for that software, is it shared across all the stations, or is it just out of your main
Oh,
station?
no, it's available across all stations and on our mobile data terminals on each apparatus. They can access data as they need for pre-planned information. If they get dispatched to an alarm, we have all of this information about that incident and that parcel that can help them mitigate just provide them more information on that.
Right. So it's available on all apparatuses.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, sorry, I forgot to ask. Would you would explain what that community online data for emergency services does?
I'm not aware of that you have. Of Chief Uchimura.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Cordero, council members. Craig Uchimura, Assistant Chief Support Services. So our codes program, it houses information like Chief Kalani was saying, for properties. It has infrastructure such as board of water supply lines, HECO information. When we go out and our personnel do pre-plans of commercial buildings, all of that information, the plans where all the fire department connections, entrance, exits are all on there. We also, that same information is passed along to EMS, so there's that collaboration on that end too. So a lot of all of our medical calls, we get the same information. The ambulance on their mobile data terminals in their apparatus has the same information as the fire truck. So, for instance, there was a violent incident in Aiea yesterday. Both fire and EMS had the same information about staging and what HPD was up to. We're not connected on the HPD side because of security issues and their CAD system. It's separate. But the HPD dispatchers, they confer with each other at JTMC so that our dispatchers and EMS dispatchers get the same information and we're on the same page. It also collects inspection reports of properties. So it's a very comprehensive system, and that Codes 2.0 you were talking about, what it is when we started, we have all these databases, and as time went on, all these databases kind of got plugged and played, and it's getting a little overwhelming. So our contractor is going back, kind of putting all the databases together so that we have one solid system moving forward. So like Chief Hall was saying, the system is going to be no different when we go to Codes 2.0, but it's going to be more of a refinement on the current system.
Oh, wow. That's actually really interesting. And then to know that is that on all apparatuses, is there a timeline, or is it just going to happen all at once in one one sweep of the, I guess, recoding or updating of codes?
It's going to take 2 or 3 years for us to get there, but the rollout, it's not going to be like flipping a switch. We're going to beta test it, and by the time it does get rolled out, it's going to be just the same functionality, but more enhanced, with more enhanced features for the end users.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I guess also, and in the same type of information that you have, I know that the Fire Prevention Bureau is doing the preventive measures of identifying and mapping out the brush and, I guess, wildland that's more, how do I say, prone to fires, I guess. So is that something that has always been mapped out? Or is that something that's going to be, I guess, more enhanced now as a program?
It's probably going to be more enhanced.
More enhanced,
Being that
okay.
what happened with Lahaina, and everybody's focused on that. So
Are we able to get federal funding for that type of preventive measures or support for HFD?
we're looking into grants, whatever there's available. We're seeking funds more for equipment on the wildland side, on how we can better respond. On the front half is more with working with outside agencies, nonprofits. We're working with, again, with the state, the federal side, with DOFA, and also, again, Hawaii Wildland Management Organization. They're a nonprofit helping to create fire-wise communities, to do that community assessments.
Yeah, that Hawaii Wildland Fire. Wait, I forgot what it's called. WHO.
HWMO,
It came out to my Moanalua Valley Community Association last night, so that was really fantastic, and I guess helped in a way to make my community feel more prepared, as opposed to like always calling HFD for a lot of things. But anyway, my next question, I guess, is relating to with all the, I guess, apparatuses, equipment, and everything. Are we taking? Is HFD taking steps to, I guess, ensure either master agreements or I guess update their master agreements for equipment, or update their procurement process so that you can, I guess, be quicker at getting your equipment, so that you don't have to wait for wait for BFS or the whole process to
Our
occur?
current system is for our smaller equipment, where is in that SP range. We do have the mechanisms all in place that we can get all of the equipment in a timely manner. We just have to plan ahead. Certain more expensive equipment, like our hydraulic rescue tools to help, in auto accidents, they have a longer lead time. A lot of our specialty items have a longer lead time, but we have it pretty much built in. We have a replacement plan, equipment replacement plan we've been having it set for the last 4 or 5 years. So we don't have an issue with the smaller equipment, the firefighting equipment. It's just, again, with those apparatuses that have that longer lead times to build.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess I just looked back at, I'm going back to the HPD Asset Forfeiture Fund. I think $5 million has always been the amount, I think, for the last four years or so. And maybe this question is more for HPD, and I can ask later. But because of, inflation and everything, do we anticipate that the need to account for the $5 million will be double that initial $5 million request?
That is a possibility. A lot of times when we have the CIP projects, and that's why I mentioned earlier, we're shying away from those grant opportunities that may have to deal with facilities, is because we just can't guarantee the cost. So if we can go and we can apply and we say we need $1 million for this project, many times in the recent years, it'll come back and it's double the cost. So we may put out for grants for maybe to replace 5 station generators. And when we start working with DDC and then the cost estimates come back, we just have to reduce scope, and that happens a lot. So it's a concern. I can understand that $5 million, to see where that would.
Because I wouldn't want to have to make like a transfer, right, in the middle of the fiscal year or in like the last quarter of a fiscal year. And I just remember in the beginning stages of the conversation relating to the hangar, that like DDC was there, and we were trying to figure out like where the funding would come from and everything. But I mean, I'm glad that it's been consistent for the last 3 years or so. But I'm just worried about the ticket, the price ticket being a lot higher. So thank you. Members, any other questions? Councilmember Day.
Thank you very much, Chief Howell. I just have about maybe 4 questions. The first one would be in regards to say thank you very much for the report on the life safety evaluation on our condominiums and apartments. Thank you for the report. Number 2, do you have anything about creating a volunteer firefighter program?
No, we don't have
Okay.
anything.
And number 3, I'm very much elated and happy, if you read the report, members, that DPP, working with HFD, have cut their particular processes down by 7.2 days, correct? In approving the fire permit for
Yes.
7.2 days. And one final thought for me was when we order these helicopters, is it already constructed and done already? Like how we go to the automobile places and we can just get the car. My question is in regards to procurement. Have you folks had the discussion with the other 4 counterparts, meaning Kauai, Maui, Big Island, and the federal government, that you folks all come together and buy, or not buy, but you order it, like how the airlines do? They order their new planes. Are we doing that, or is it's already constructed and you're just taking it out of the shop or the showcase?
It's customized on what features that we would want.
Oh, so not all 4 counties are the same then?
No, I think Maui is contracted. They have their contracted pilots. I think Big Island's funding, I think there was a private entity that actually purchased their helicopter for them.
The thought was if you order in bulk, it's much more cheaper for all 5 counterparts, meaning the 4 counties plus the federal government. That's the thought I had in getting that particular price down. I don't know, but that's okay.
I think we've been working with each other because each of the different counties, even with our personal protective equipment, we all use different. So usually we take the lead, and we're open up all of those type of master agreements to allow the other counties to opt in. So yes, I'm not sure on the larger apparatuses. I think we all have our own different needs and wants, and so the specifications would be different per county.
And one final thought for me, with the new helicopter coming online, will that helicopter be able to take care of the replacement of the U.S. Army in medevacs?
It would have the capabilities to do so, and that's something that we know that we would look into it. Our program manager is already kind of mapping it out on what we need to do internally to make sure that aircraft is equipped properly to be able to do that type of transport, as well as our personnel that is properly trained to do that and get the proper licensing and certifications required to do that type of response.
It's just that if you don't have the support of the U.S. Army in regards to their medevac that they used to provide the services, the distance for transporting a victim is long distance if you're in the country, right?
Correct.
Okay. And Madam Chair, I have one more question. Madam Chair, may I ask one more question?
Go ahead, Councilmember Say.
Yeah, and finally, just wanted to share with you, do you folks get involved with the formulation of our building code? Which I think your presence is really wanted to share your thoughts about what it is when we adopt these building codes.
We do the fire code portion, the building code side. My understanding, we consult. We consult.
Okay. And then this one, I just wanted to know the history. How did HFD be in charge of ocean rescue? You get two stations that provide ocean rescue, or 3 stations.
In the past, we had rescue watercraft.
Right.
But in our opinion, it was taken away from our primary lane of responsibility to maintain the rescue watercraft, and it was the training component to do firefighting, medical, hazmat, and rescue type of things. That's the services we provide in emergency response. It was taking a lot of bandwidth away from our primary, and we had that incident where one of our firefighters actually passed and got injured. He broke his neck during a training exercise. So we moved away from the watercraft. Okay. And now that ocean safety is dawn to dusk, they've taken over the primary. I mean, they've always been the primary, but because they've changed their hours and their staffing has been up, then we are just like, we always support even EMS and ocean safety because we can arrive on the scene sooner. So we have the capabilities. We have surfboards, we have tubes. All of our personnel have fins. We do annual training on water rescues as well. So we can perform that, but again, not as being the primary.
Okay, just the thought that sometimes when you folks are doing it, or ocean safety is doing it, the jurisdiction, who do we call?
The 911 call is going to be executed, and whoever gets there first. Yep.
Because sometimes, there was some shipping incidents that occurred. There were some shipping incidents that occurred that there was death, and then I think it was your officers that went down to retrieve the bodies.
We do surf under, like Coast Guard, they only do surface rescue. Our rescue personnel can go underwater and do that type of rescue.
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much because the general public is listening to your comments, and just keep up the good work on behalf of the voters that I represent, or district that I do represent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, members. I appreciate that. And Chief Howell, thank you very much for being here and bringing your team with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have the Emergency Services Department, which includes EMS, Ocean Safety, and all the other divisions within the Emergency Services Department. Members, the departmental communication for HESD is Departmental Communications 155, D155. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Island. Thank you very much for being here, and we are excited to hear about your updates.
Thank you, Chair and Council members. Today, I have with me Deputy Director Ian Santee, who's working the computer here, Ocean Safety Chief John Titchen, Assistant Chief of Operations Kurt Lager, who's in an E911 meeting outside the door. We have Branch Chief of Health Services, Carla Perry, our Acting Branch Chief for Community Medicine Core, Kathy Higa. We also have our ASO, Leanne Kaneko, and Sam Iwamuro, our Administrative Support Specialist. The EMS team is at a pre-scheduled one-day hiring event today. So they're busy filling our vacancies, so couldn't make it today on this rescheduled day that we are able to present to you our budget. So if we go, are we ready? Yeah. If we go to our first slide, the proposed FY25 budget reflects an overall 7.9% increase from the current fiscal year. In administration, which covers the core team, there's a 57.7 increase, 3.4% in EMS, 14% in health services, and 5% in ocean safety. These increases collectively represent increases in positions, continued equipment and support for ambulances, jet skis, rescue trucks, as well as collective bargaining increases. If we go to the next slide, in administration, there's approximately $2.7 million increase to cover 14 contract positions, mostly in core as well as for some wraparound services. EMS has a $1.3 million increase, and included in that is 6 ambulances, new ambulances, as well as collective bargaining increases. Health Services has a $171,000 increase, which includes one position to support all the occupational health and physicals for the city. And the Ocean Safety Division has a $1.1 million increase, which includes 8 civil service positions, as well as ATVs, trucks, and jet skis. Next slide. In CORE, as you know, this is the outreach program for the homeless. They are taking calls for homeless in crisis, but this is also reducing calls for service from EMS, as well as to a lesser extent HFD and HPD. The budget increase is for 14 personnel. CORE in its inception was largely federally funded, to a lesser degree state funded, but these expenses are also covering some wraparound services for our medical respite and assistance to some of the shelters that we support. This is a breakdown by activity, and I can answer questions on that slide if you have questions later. Next slide. Going to our administration, again, this is where we house CORE and the community medicine branch. Again, the changes reflect changes in salary for the 14 contract positions, as well as current expenses for the wraparound services. And we're doing it initially in contract positions because CORE may increase on the short term, and when we start having some successes, additional successes, and maybe ideally don't need as many on the CORE team, then those can contract back down. But for the time being, we know homelessness is getting worse, and we plan to help combat that aggressively in the next fiscal year. In emergency medical services, we did get 12 added positions in last year's budget for 2 additional 12-hour ambulances. So we're not asking for any positions this year in the next budget. We're more focused on getting our vacancies hopefully in the single digits, as well as operating the additional resources we put in last year's budget. The increase there is primarily reflected in collective bargaining increases, but we do also propose 6 new ambulances as replacement for kind of a ongoing aging fleet replacement. We have 6 ambulances that were in last year's budget, but as the fire chief alluded to, there is a time delay when we order equipment, and they're telling us now when we order something like an ambulance, it's 500 days to receive it. So we expect the ambulances that we received in the current budget to come in March of 25. But that's where we're going to get 6 replacement ambulances in March of 25, and we're proposing an additional 6 in this budget. In the health services branch, that increase reflects 1 additional position, a medical assistant, to help with everything we do in health services, which is physical exams, hearing, vision, drug testing, DUI testing, urine testing, so all the things we do for occupational health, as well as, and I'm not sure if this body knows, but we also do all the DUI testing for the state of Hawaii. So if there's someone who is pulled over for DUI and they request a blood draw, our health personnel services do that blood draw, and then our lab does the testing, and then we subsequently go to court to testify for DUIs. So that's part of our services at Health Services. In Ocean Safety, we have in the salaries an increase of just under $1 million, and that's 8 additional civil service positions. We also have continued to fund what we call line item 1125 or 1125, and that funds every year an additional 34 contract positions that we use for our recruit classes. I understand we have a recruit class in May here next month. Right now it looks like about 20 people in that class as of today. We also have in this budget planned for 4 trucks, 6 watercraft, 10 ATVs, as well as, I believe, 6 towers? 4 towers, excuse me, 4 towers. Oh, we had 6 towers. Excuse me, yeah, 6 towers. Our vacancies, next slide. As of February 1st of this year, we have 63, including approximately 22 in Ocean Safety, 27 in EMS, 13 in admin, and 1 in the Health Services branch. The Health Services branch vacancy is going to be filled next week. We anticipate all these vacancies to be filled half of them at least to be filled by July 1st. And we always strive for no vacancies. I think EMS has been the biggest challenge. We're at our lowest vacancy rate in EMS in probably 20 years. And we've achieved this through our traditional hiring through KCC, but also now doing our own academy. Just like the fire department, the police department, and ocean safety has recruit classes, we hire people now and put them through the KCC education as our own employees. So looking at the 27 EMS vacancies, we have 13 people starting by the end of the month, EMTs and 1 paramedic, and then we have slated 24 people for our recruit class July 1st. So that's more than enough to fill all those vacancies, although we always anticipate also people who retire or perhaps leave us for other reasons. And again, with the 22 ocean safety vacancies, we do have a recruit class, as of right now, 20 people scheduled to start next month. Next slide. This is our overtime for administration, EMS, health services, and ocean safety. And I can answer questions about that later if you have them. Next slide. These are our revenue sources. We get a very small amount of revenue from records requests. These are people who want their ambulance medical record because they were in an accident or they need to document their injury. The state funds from the transition from state funded to city funded is going to be about $3.5 million in FY25, and that will go on every year. And our revenue for billing is estimated to be $42 million for FY25. And then lifeguard services covering state parks is approximately $1.3 million. And then the last slide is our CIP projects that we're proposing. The Kahuku Ambulance Facility, we already have a station there, but it is not, I mean, it's in okay shape, but it's small. It only has 1 bay. And this renovation will allow us to have 2 bays. We'll be able to store some disaster equipment up there and just a more modern and green-friendly, and not green the governor, green environment, friendly building. When we have noticed in the past when there's really bad weather, there are times when the Waihole area becomes flooded and impassable, and at the same time we've had rock slides in Waimea, which has essentially isolated that whole part of the island. So we feel buffing up our kind of disaster response capabilities to cover that part of the island is important. In ocean safety, in last year's budget, we put planning money in for the Kakako station, and that a vendor has been selected to do the design, and we're meeting with them shortly. By shortly, I mean sometime in the next few weeks, to design the Kakako ambulance facility for the district headquarters there, which will also house an ambulance for Kakako, which was also funded in last year's budget. But we'd like to do the same thing in Waianae. So the parcel behind the fire station that was parks, we had that transferred over to our department, and our plan is to build a district substation there for the lifeguards and base the ambulance there behind the fire station. Right now, the ambulance in Waianae is at the fire station. We have very small space within the fire station that our crews use, and this would be, I think, in a more appropriate size and station. We'd be able to park the ambulance inside. The other thing is we do anticipate needing a second ambulance on the Waianae coast within the next 3 to 5 years. We would probably base it at the same place. We'd probably call it Makaha, but we'd probably co-locate it with Waianae. So we had a 2-bay station with ocean safety behind the current fire station. That would be ideal to respond to emergencies, east or west of that Waianae substation with 2 ambulances. And the issue is there are quite a few calls on the Waianae coast, not an overwhelming amount like downtown, but there's not necessarily short transport times. The ambulances have to go usually to Queens West. If it's an obstetrics emergency, they may have to go all the way to Kapiolani. If it's a trauma patient, they may have to go to Polimomi or Queens Punch Bowl. And so what that does is it takes the ambulance out of the area for an extended period of time, even an hour or 2. And so, we do see the need in the future for additional EMS resources on the Waianae coast. And then finally, the Waipio Ambulance Facility. This is our training center. Currently, our ambulance training center is at the airport along with our administration. and our administration is planning to move next year to the blood bank. And we pay around $65,000 or $70,000 a month in rent at the airport. So vacating the airport will, over the long term, have a great cost savings, but we do need a new training facility. We had considered what was being planned in Mililani Mauka with the state, but that is not progressing like we thought it would. And so this is for our training center, moving from the airport to a lot that is already in our department behind our current Waipio station. And this would have our driver's training, our classroom space, and our simulators. And simulators meaning where there's a robot body and you can mimic different types of emergencies, very similar to what they have at the medical school. And paramedics can train on this robot and look at the EKG and the vital signs and mimic an emergency situation with a robot. So that concludes our presentation for today. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. I really appreciate it. First up, we'll have Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Good to see you, Dr. Ireland.
Thank you.
On the page regarding the breakdown of the various percentage increases in the budget, which is on, I guess, page 3, I know you briefly touched upon it on the admin, 57.7% change. Can you elaborate again? Is this because you're converting FRF funds for core to general funds?
Yes, and core now has about 35 people. We'd like to get it up to about 50 was the mayor's goal, 50 people for homelessness. So also a part of that too is so we can regularly service areas outside of downtown and Waikiki, including the windward side, the leeward side, and central Oahu. Our plan all along was to fund roughly a third of core every year as we wean off of FRF funds and other federal funding. And so this is part of that plan. And so it's for 14 positions that will be leaving FRF funding into city funding, but they are contract positions, so they're not permanent civil service at this time.
And so what's the difference in the funding? Are we paying more for the contract versus a civil service job? I'm just, it's a lot of money, 7.4 million. So I guess I'm just trying to ask, are we getting most for our money by doing contract versus if it was a career position?
These are city employees. They get the same benefits. So I think the cost is about the same. It's just, if we want to make these permanent in the cities, in let's say our organizational structure that will go on forever, then we will convert these to civil service.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And I do believe it should be measuredly as you are still trying to get to a place so that we see how you work with other agencies on the effectiveness of the program, which gets me to the Ivalei Center. Because we get calls. I was just mentioning it the other day about, sometimes we feel helpless because we don't know who to call, right? When we do our risers, whether it's going to be you, whether it's going to be HPD, CSD, or IHS, right? So the question is, at this center, Ivalei Center, can you distinguish for me what your role is going to be versus the Department of Community Services and the Institute for Human Services?
Sure. And just to be clear, there's what we did call the Ivalei Resource Center, where CORE had a medical respite, has now changed hands to the state. It's a city building. It's the old Montgomery Motors. That is now being called, I believe, like the Mental Health Stabilization Center or Crisis Center. So that was called the Ivalei Resource Center. So now that's a state DOH Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Center right across the street from IHS. What we're calling Ivalei Center versus Ivalei Resource Center is the group of warehouses that the city recently purchased across from the Punawai rest stop. Our role there is our core medical clinic that we run with the JABSOM home program, the medical clinic for people who, not just for the homeless, anybody who doesn't have insurance can come there. It's basically a free clinic. We are going to move that off Pauahi Street to the Ivalei Center. So our role in that center is to have the medical clinic there It's a free city medical clinic that's partially staffed by medical students and doctors from JABSOM as a partnership to provide free health care to the homeless as well as anybody else who wants to go there. The rest of Evilay Center will be managed via the community services
so
department.
it's mostly medical related versus the other social services that the other entities provide that I mentioned. What about beds? Beds.
So we in the clinic will have exam beds, but we're not going to manage overnight shelter beds. That's going to be up to the nonprofits and under community health services.
Got it. And Department of Community Services. Okay.
Yes. But, we're going to work right with them.
And Director Krucky yesterday mentioned a command center that they are building up. Are you guys going to have a role in that command center?
I anticipate we will, because really, what's really important as we kind of get into a different level of engagement in the homelessness crisis is kind of knowing where everybody is, knowing where they're going, knowing where they need to go. And that type of tracking system is key, because sometimes, like when CORE is looking for somebody, we don't know they're in Queens Hospital, or we don't know they're at Kuakini, or we don't know they're in jail, or we don't know they've been housed. So I think we will have a role in that. I don't know what it will be just yet, but I think that's going to be key to really being organized. It's kind of like having a point in time count all the time, live, just knowing where everybody is.
And with regard to when we need to reach out, that number that was given, 768 CORE, so that we don't have to figure out where, if we have problems, that's what we should be referring constituents or our staff to.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the proposed Kalama Beach lifeguard station. I understand it's in the pipeline, and are we expecting to have that up and running in the summer?
I'm going to let Chief John Titchens share our good news with you, but yes.
Okay.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, Council members. I'm John Titchen. I'm the Chief of Ocean Safety. Yes, Council member, we are hopeful of seeing that tower in this calendar year. We like to underpromise and overdeliver at Ocean Safety. I did speak to the vendor yesterday in anticipation of today's hearing. The tower has been built. It's being glassed. It's a picture of a surfboard that gets laminated and glassed. And it will be shipped, hopefully, in the next few weeks. We have equipment. We have the positions. Thank you. And we do hope to install that tower as soon as we can, but in a careful, deliberative way, just like we did for Kahe Point. We have to add it into the 911 system. Our partners need to be aware. But yes, we have a plan.
Looking forward to that. And so you don't need any more funding to make sure you have the adequate number of positions for this, correct?
We do not, Council member. It's just a matter of working with the community now and going to the
Okay, terrific. We're looking forward to it. And just let me know when that happens. And lastly, Dr. Ireland, as you know, in Lanikai, we're in the throes of dealing with the Lanikai Transportation Management Plan with the Department of Transportation Services. And one concern that has been repeatedly raised is the concern over when there is a gridlock, that emergency vehicles are might be hindered by getting to people who need help. And second, I've also heard continuously concerns by medical professionals, doctors and nurses who live in Lanikai, who are hindered from being able to get to work. And of course, if a doctor is on call for, for like the emergency room, it's of concern. So can I ask, in your experience, have you ever had a problem getting into Lanikai in an emergency situation where there was gridlock?
I would say, hard to say never, but generally our ambulances can get in and around Lanikai. I've seen where rescues have been needed, let's say from the pillbox, where the fire department is going to the pillbox. They're setting up a landing zone in the elementary school. So there's a few different fire apparatus. There's an ambulance, there's a battalion chief, our supervisor, and they all have been able to move through Lanikai. You know, it's not spacious, It's not a generous amount where two emergency vehicles can go side by side, but they can generally
Okay,
get in there.
so even in gridlock, you are able to have the cars move on the side for a ambulance to get through, correct?
Yes.
I just want to make sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Council Vice Chair. Next, we have Committee Vice Chair Wire, followed by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
Mahalo, Chair. Thank you, Director, for the presentation. Kind of going off of Vice Chair's questions about core, and I wonder if you could first maybe expand a little bit more on what the additional positions are going to result in terms of both geographically specifically and even maybe hours of service.
Right now, core is generally running 7A to 7P. They're focused, historically have started in Chinatown, Waikiki, to a lesser extent in Kalihi and Kaimaki. But we are going on what I call day trips to Aiea, Pearl City, North Shore, Wahiawa, Windward Side, and also to Waianae. But by bulking up the staff to the goal of 50 to 60 people versus the current 35, it will, I just think, really allow us to spend more time in the more rural communities because we know there's no space on Oahu that hasn't been touched by homelessness. And I think with the mayor's and the governor's ambitious plans for Kauhales and shelter and respite, the key is then finding places for those folks to go. And my experience has been, especially people who are born and raised here who are homeless, want to stay in the communities where they find themselves homeless. So it's very difficult to get somebody, let's say, from West Oahu or Windward Oahu to come to a shelter in town. So I think working city and state partnerships with the nonprofits, finding solutions in each community, particularly from people who are from those communities, I think will allow core then to get more people placed. But these enhancements in core will just allow us to get more to these more rural communities.
Okay, appreciate that insight. And I'm just curious because I know a lot of it is, based on calls that come in or where situations arise. But I'd imagine like every community has enough people to warrant services. So I'm just curious if there's going to be like a specific geographic allocation of the staff, or it sounds like you're saying it's just kind of beefing up the program so they can do greater outreach.
Right. So even if they're based in Iwalei, they can, the whole team, I mean, I've gone with them before, the whole team can go to Kailua, the whole team can go to, we spent a lot of times in the beach called Sewers that's in Waianae, or out in Makaha, out in along the beach parks there. But as far as putting another branch, let's say in Wahiawa or the North Shore or Waianae, we don't have any plans for that right now. It's just more from the central area moving out. But there's no reason in the future we couldn't think about putting smaller teams in these other areas.
Okay, no, I definitely appreciate that. It sounds like you're open to the idea, but it doesn't seem like maybe it's been contemplated yet because you're in the beefing up stages.
Yeah, and for instance, if we put a core team in Wahiawa and we had great success there, and then they weren't needed there anymore, then what? Especially if we get a building and pay rent and that sort of thing. So right now, having the flexibility of being mobile and responding to community concerns is a better operational fit today.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And I don't know if it's maybe something you could talk with DCS about as well, because there are a few properties in Wahiawa that I think would maybe be prime locations. One that comes to mind is the Achieve Zero property that they never got to really stand up before they closed. And then there's a few other problematic properties in the community that I think could be really good opportunities. And of course, if you're in that area, I mean, it would service Mililani as well, I'm assuming, as well as the North Shore, but other parts of the area. And then I just wanted to walk through, because a lot of folks in the community are asking about the whole ocean safety conversation, and I, of course, wouldn't expect you to get ahead of the mayor and his announcements, but in terms of the budget that's being contemplated now, how would that relate to or be impacted by maybe a separation of the departments?
I think what we have said is that if there were a separation of departments, we would potentially need additional administrative positions, and there's different ways to do that. It's obviously a reorganization, which does take some time on paper. And then it'd be a matter of adding those positions later into the budget or converting existing positions into admin positions. So there's a few different ways to do it, but that might be a better conversation for next week.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, followed by Councilmember Tupola, followed by Councilmember Okimoto.
Thanks, Chair. I have 3 questions, the first of which is a specific question. Director, could you explain OC 3006, which is other professional services? It's $200,000 for wraparound services at the homeless Evile Center.
Give you deputy.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members again. Ian Santi, Deputy Director, Honolulu Emergency Services Department. So those services allows us to contract out other consulting services like the nonprofit providers, as well as also to bring in food to service the homeless if we're doing an event or activity. But that's pretty much the general category of that.
And I guess this gets to, I'm a huge supporter of CORE, and I see the change that they've made in Chinatown, but I do want to clarify, there's also the state contracts out, nonprofits contract things out. To what extent or how does CORE look at whether the services that CORE is doing or EMS is doing is in any way duplicating those state contracted services or nonprofits? How do we evaluate this?
We meet regularly. We work with partners in care to discuss areas of concern. We work collaboratively. An example is, again, as we talked about, is the HMIS system, the homeless management system, where if an individual is on the street and they have a provider with them that has been acknowledged, they're put into the system. If our core team comes across that individual, we don't just skip them, because sometimes it does take as we talked about before, it does take the daily encouragement to get an individual that's on the street and building the rapport to get them off. So I think we all work together and we're not stepping on each other's toes. We're actually collaborating, and I think that collaboration and having the resources from the city as well as the providers actually decreases the amount of people that are on the street and gets them off.
Good. Yeah, I just want to make sure, that we're working together, not in a duplicative way, but everybody has sort of their kuleana and we're all moving together. The last question that I have is somewhat philosophical. That we have a police commission, we have a fire commission. In the legislation that talks about ocean safety being its own department, there's a proposed ocean safety commission. Why is there no emergency services commission?
That's a great question. And, when you look back at the city government, ambulance service on Oahu started with the city and county in around 1920. And the police department had ambulances and the city health department had ambulances. Historically, the city health department was a physician-led department, and ambulance was a part of that department. And then there were changes in the 90s where then there was no more city health department, and there became now Ocean Safety left parks, and it made emergency services. And why the city physician or the city, which is now the emergency services director, my position, hasn't been changed, I don't have an answer for that. I think looking at commissions here and elsewhere, I think there's really good things people can find about commissions, and then I think the opposite is true as well, where maybe commissions didn't work as well as the public would have liked with respect to how fast they acted and accountability. So I don't have an answer to your question. I think we always, though, are looking for better ways to do things, both in EMS and ocean safety. So it's probably like a good conversation for another day, but I don't have an answer why there hasn't been in the past.
Thank you. Yeah, this is something, that I've sort of been thinking about, so I appreciate your answer.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Tupola, followed by Councilmember Okimoto, followed by Councilmember Talba.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just to follow up, Dr. Eileen, thank you for being here with us today. Thanks for your presentation. I think a commission would be advantageous in regards to what we're speaking about with CORE. Has there been to date any type of formal written report of the impact over the years of CORE?
In the sense of like a formal report, like a city auditor report,
Yeah.
No, but we do have our own internal metrics and we have our internal reporting. And, for instance, 911 calls that went to CORE that didn't go to EMS. And so we do keep track of that, and we'd be happy to share that data, who we've got housed, who we've got shelter. You know, for instance, there was a gentleman on Mauna Kea Street who was calling 911 every day. So if you go back years, he was responsible for just one person now, hundreds and hundreds of 911 calls that we in EMS went to, the fire department went to, the police went to, and CORE was able to take care of him. Another gentleman on River Street who'd been there for 7 years, calling 911 a couple times a week. So those are not always easy to measure, that kind of data, because we're preventing calls that aren't happening. There's right now somebody on Sunset Beach who's homeless who calls 911 like every other day, and the fire department's going and EMS is going. And so CORE is engaging him to try to find appropriate medical and shelter for him so he doesn't use 911 services. So that data is harder and a little harder to get and show, but we definitely can show what we've responded to, who we've engaged, and who we've housed, and we'd be happy to provide that to your office.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll submit it to the chair too so that the full committee can have access to it. And just to reiterate what the mission statement of the department is to provide quality pre-hospital emergency medical care. It also has prevent injuries, promote safer, healthier lifestyles, educate the public about emergency medical services. And I think what you just brought up is more in the realm of it, meaning somebody calling 911 and addressing that, to me, sounds like, okay, that's something that's directly affecting your department. But I do think that the expansion of CORE into homeless services is outside of what you guys' mission is. And I believe that that would be something that would be handled by a commission, right? Whether or not they think that we're kind of veering into territories where DCS should maybe be involved, or maybe IHS should have an internal team. And I think for Councilmember Dos Santos' TAM district, especially because it's right in the heart of town, it makes a lot of sense. But for me, on the west side, does it make sense for CORE team members to show up and maybe treat guys at sewers or whatever? I help homeless people every week, 4 times a week, over 100 people, know them by name, from Ulehava all the way down to depots, know every single one of them. Drove a guy to shelter last week. I need a lot of my homeless guys to get with a PCP. I need them to know what hospital they're supposed to be at. Do they have a primary care provider? Have they applied for welfare or some type of support if they are qualified for mental health support? There's much more that I need to do than just treat a wound and so forth. However, I will say what you're suggesting with if someone's over abusing 911 or if they've been going to the emergency room over and over, I think that's really what CORE really should do, stay with those cases. But with a lot of the other cases, like I would need to know, and we have a collaborative network in White and I have all of us working together, I would need to know if somebody has been treating them on the side from what we're trying to do with them, because I collaborate with 75 different entities in my community and businesses. And I just think that for me, seeing this overtime, of which I don't know if, it's a lot, but 5.7 million in overtime for EMS, I just asked myself, would we be better served to have 50 more paramedics than 50 more CORE members? And I'm asking that because I do think that we need more emergency service responders, but I'm just wondering, where does that line fall that we're servicing enough on the paramedic side and that we're saying, hey, CORE is meant to handle bringing 911 calls, but we cannot. I'm just gonna say it flat out. Cannot serve the whole homeless population. I got 500 people on the beach. So there's no way. I think it's just way over the head of anyone to say, we're gonna go handle all the homeless on the island. We got over 4,000. So I'm just saying, are we spreading ourselves too thin? And maybe we should draw back and say, hey, this is what we can do and do it well. And I've told that to homeless people I help. They said, how come you don't help more people? I said, because the more people I help, the less helpful I become. Because if I'm trying to help 500 people all at the same time, I'm doing a junk job. So I help in little blocks at a time, 30 to 50 people a day when we work in it 4 days a week so that we can help them from A to Z and not A to B or C to D. So I think my question to you in regards to CORE is, would we be better served to have more paramedics than expand the CORE team?
First of all, when your term is expired, we'd like to hire you at CORE, potentially. But in seriousness, number one, we actually both would help us. 50 more paramedics with additional CORE people. I mean, both I think are really important. But to your point, one of the things CORE does is get people primary care physicians, and especially at the federally funded community health centers like Waianae Comp or Kalihi Palama or Waikiki Health, because it's very important that people have primary care. But to your point, I think this is where potentially the command center if it becomes what I think it's going to become, is going to be extremely helpful, because you and your groups can input information into that center potentially, so CORE knows what you're doing, so the other nonprofits know what you're doing. So if there's medical school outreach, home program, they know what you're doing, and everybody kind of has an idea what everybody else is doing, so we don't duplicate, or we find where maybe there's areas that nobody's taking care of, and we need to put somebody in those pukas.
Understood. I mean, I would say you guys need to insert yourselves into what we're doing, because I work with every nonprofit in Waianae that services the homeless. Do you guys put that information of when you get somebody a PCP into the HMIS system? So that portion of it is helpful for us. But again, like when we're building these long-term relationships, and sure, now they have a PCP, but having them remember that, having them remember where they went to, or where they went, like those are the kind of things where I feel like me teaching maybe what you guys are doing to community members that are helping in churches and helping them to understand that these pieces for homeless individuals, sewing them over a long-term solution for me is more helpful, because from day to day, they don't know what day it is, what time it is, who just helped them. I always ask them, they say, oh, somebody gave me this thing on the beach. Who was it? Oh, I don't know.
No, and I do agree with that too, that as I've done more work in homelessness over the last 2 years, there are a significant contribution from the faith-based community all over Oahu. And I agree with you that we at CORE and the government, we don't exactly know what everybody's doing. And I think if there was more organization to that, we could get synergy as a group together, government, city, state, nonprofits, and volunteers, no matter where they're coming from, to just do better.
Well, and I'll invite you guys out to come and train people that work with me, because we host these at different churches. But this $200,000 that you guys have for wraparound services, foods, and supplies, I'm telling you right now, I could get that for you. We should cut this out. We should get it from someone else, because that's what I've been doing in my community. Is there's so many people that are trying to feed and help. How do we direct it in a way where we're all moving the same direction and not duplicating, but also doing the important things, which is, did they actually get the mental health that they need, help that they needed? Not just did they get food and clothing, like did they get an assessment? Did they get where they needed to go with their doctor? Did they get these, whatever they're supposed to pick up at the pharmacy? So I'm appreciative. I don't want to say that I'm not, and I hope that didn't come off like I'm not. I'm appreciative of it. But all that follow-up, that follows on the community, making sure that person goes to Long's and picks up their prescription, making sure that, those are the kind of things I would like to sow into those community members that really want to work and teach them how to do it. If you were to break out the 63 position vacancies you have, where's the majority of the vacancies?
The vacancies. Let me see, get my notes here. We have, of the 63 vacancies, roughly a third are in oceans, about a third in ocean safety, about a little more than a third in EMS, and less than a third in admin and core and health services. So of the 63 vacancies, 22 are in ocean safety, 27 are in EMS, 13 are in the admin group, and 1 is in health services. But of the 22 vacancies in ocean safety, again, we're having a recruit class next month with 20 lifeguards. Now, they're going to come in under contract, but ideally, we always hope 20 will be successful of the 20 that come. But ideally, some of them will move into those 22 vacancies of the civil service positions. Of the 27 EMS positions, we have 13 EMTs and 1 paramedic starting later this month, and 24 scheduled to start July 1st. So that's actually too many. We don't even have positions for all those people, but we anticipate with retirements and other people leaving, that would actually satisfy all the vacancies with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 in EMS. And then admin has 13 vacancies, health services has 1, and that is being filled on Monday.
And for the salaries for admin, the 84% increase, which is a lot, can you break it down exactly how that got so high?
We're going to have to send you something exactly to break it down by the position, but it is, as the director pointed out again, it is on the transition of the FRF money over to for core. So again, a lot of it was in FRF already, and this is now putting them into city
How many positions were FRF'd? Was it in like 30 or something?
Actually, yeah, actually all positions, when we started core 2 years ago, all positions were under FRF. With this transition total, there should be 12, 9, 21, about 33 or 34 positions all funded for core through salary.
How many number of core positions do you have?
Today, right now, the actual bodies is 35.
So it's the transferring from one fund to another, but
Yes.
not new positions?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we had talked last year about trying to transfer some
Yeah.
over. And then my next question is, does the ambulances you're suggesting for YNA coincide with AMR? Because AMR operates out of like Sea Country and they have like 3 ambulances in Miley.
So again, AMR, American Medical Response, is is a backup, and they do primary role is interfacility transfers. So they do work with the Kaiser Clinic. They transfer out of Waianae Coast. In Sea Country, we do have our Nanakuli ambulance station over there, back at the end of the road, and also in Waianae, we have an ambulance station over there. So the ambulances that Dr. Ireland was referring to is actually to help support that community because of the long transport time, as well as the increase in the call volume on that side.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you guys are using the land behind the fire station because, I mean, it's just there. So the little space you guys have is tiny. In regards to OSD, sorry, question for the chief. Those 17 positions we gave for ocean safety, they've all been funded and filled?
Thank you, Councilmember, for the question. I wanted to clarify that and was hopeful the department would explain it because while we do have vacancies at Ocean Safety, this body will remember that last year the administration gave us 14 and this body added 18 during the fiscal year. The administration didn't accept those positions until, I believe, the second quarter. Essentially, those employees are already working for Ocean Safety. This is why I had advocated a year ago to add those positions, is that we would be able to hire our contract personnel into full-time civil service positions. We're very grateful for that ad, and we would have filled those positions long ago had they been added in the beginning of this fiscal year, if that makes sense. We're very comfortable with the numbers that are presented for FY25. It's essentially flat. But now this gives us a chance to use our contract money to once again build a good pool of contract employees for ocean safety. Happy to clarify.
Yeah, so you're saying the positions that we put in the budget had been funded, but they were funded late, and therefore they didn't get filled?
That's correct. They were funded in the, where they are added to our budget in the middle of the fiscal year. Yeah.
And so now you can fill it, though?
Most definitely. We actually have our interview panel scheduled for 2 weeks from today. We're very excited about the personnel that we do have. We continue to grow steadily and surely toward an ultimate goal of improving this dawn to dusk coverage.
And the dawn to dusk, briefly, is in how many areas and how much more do you foresee us getting done this year?
I believe we've made great progress, thanks very much to the administration and the collaborative work with this council. In 2023, essentially by the end of the summer in 2023, all of our 42 towers around the island were on duty from 8 to 6:30 p.m., an additional 2 hours. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but for those who go to the beach, they understand that our evening hours are very, very busy. That was the second phase of a very methodical approach to managing this response to a dawn to dusk mandate. Our first phase, of course, were the mobile responders. Those are the 911 callers. This body is well aware that ocean safety is part of the 911 system. We do receive 911 calls, and we co-respond with fire and in EMS and HPD, of course. That was the first phase. The second phase has been achieved mostly. I believe we could add a few more positions. I've stated all along that a adequate number of personnel for our division with the current number of stations that we do have is about 325, and we're getting very, very close to that. If we add any towers or if there's a demand for additional service, that's something else to consider. But the third and final phase would be to create special duty teams similar to the fire department construct where they specialize in early morning and late evening hours, if that makes sense. And that's the third phase, and I believe we're maybe a year or two away from that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm glad that they finally got funded. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have
Chair,
Council.
sorry, real quick. I wanted to clarify something for council member about the overtime for EMS.
Can you announce your name and title? Sorry,
Right.
just because we have to announce whenever.
My apologies,
Yeah,
but I was trying to finish up on the, again, Ian Santee, Deputy Director, Emergency Services. And council member, for the EMS overtime that you pointed out,
Yeah, can you?
yeah, the 5.7 million that you pointed out, the 1.5 of it is holiday overtime. So that's specific to collective bargaining. So when our employees work in EMS, that's already part of collective bargaining. So you take that out of the picture because that's part of CBA. And as far as the remainder, $4.1 million of overtime, $3 million of that is allocated already towards their alternate work schedule. So in the emergency medical services personnel, they're working a 48-hour work week, then a 36-hour work week. So because of FLSA, they're already, that $3 million of that is already put into that thing. So that really leaves our emergency medical services only about $1 million, a little bit over $1 million in overtime for late calls, for leave balances, for training, and so forth.
So the overtime and holiday, that's the 5 million together. And because I can't see previous years, you're saying this is pretty typical.
Yeah, actually, the previous years, and I do apologize, previous years, and that was about, this past year was 6.5.
So it's higher.
Yes. So and that was because of our vacancies, but as we've gone down through decreasing our vacancies, we anticipate the overtime to go down, but it's gonna maintain around $4 million because again, the funding is because of their already collective bargaining that they have because of their alternate work schedule.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that. I honestly don't understand exactly what you guys were mandated to do versus what, we're actually racking up in hours.
No, and that's, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to do that, and we'd be more than happy to come and explain further for you on the side.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you guys. I mean, I know so many EMTs personally, and they just honestly like giving their heart and soul out there.
They do.
And so I just want to make sure that they have that support, and if they need more EMTs, that we're prioritizing them and not, thinking that we can handle the bandwidth or the load that we have. And so I hope that, in the comments I made that you guys know I'm very, very grateful for all that you do.
No, thank you. And as the director pointed out, we do need all the support that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Okimoto, followed by Councilmember Tulba. And then we're going to go back around to the Committee Vice Chair Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Director Ireland. Thank you for the little report on the training center that's in Waipio, which is in my district. I look forward to accepting the invite and doing a ride along or a site visit with you. I had some questions, and this is just kind of following up on things that I had asked about in the past. But on average, right now, how many units are closed daily? Ambulance units.
I'll be happy to give you the data, but I would say on average, it's over the last, let's say, month, it's down to 1 or 2 shifts a day versus, in the past up to 2 or 3. But we also, to cover that, have up to 6 additional ambulances covering in the day to mitigate the 1 or 2 that are closed. And by 6, I mean 3 contracted AMR ambulances, the 2 core ambulances, which do cross over to 911 when it's a homeless caller. And then we've added a surge ambulance in the Kalihi area to cover. So it's way down from before, but we're not quite to 0 yet.
Okay, could you refresh my memory? I know I've asked you this before, but how many, and there's a difference between units and shifts. Is that correct?
So there's 21 units.
Okay.
But typically if we close a unit, it's not for 24 hours, it's just for 12 hours. So if I say we've closed 2, like if we closed 2 ambulances yesterday, it wasn't 2 full 24-hour ambulances, it was 2 12-hour ambulances.
And so the 12 hours is a shift?
Is a shift. So we closed maybe 2 different ambulances for 1 shift each.
Okay. And I want to follow up on this because there was a report last year that said about 1/3 of your units were shut down in a day.
Correct.
Were these units closed down or were they out for the whole day?
I think, and I don't remember the exact circumstances of that, but I think we had a number of personnel out with COVID and flu at the time, coupled with the normal vacations and people who are, have hurt backs and out for workman's comp. And there's always going to be, we have up to 10 people a day on vacation. And, that's, part of their working privileges. People get vacation. So we allow vacation. But then on top of that, we have injuries, we have sick calls. So I think there was 1 or 2 days last year where it was a perfect storm of just too many people off, not enough people to bring back for overtime, and we did have 7 or 8 ambulances closed.
Just on the side, do you have evidence or stats on which districts were most affected by these units that were being shut down or closed
What
down?
our supervisors try to do is balance that. So they're not going to close Makakilo, Nanakuli, and Waianae, or they're not going to close Kahuku, Wailua, and Wahiwa. What they'll do is they'll take maybe one from the west side, one from windward side, and maybe one in town if they have to close 3 shifts to mitigate. The other thing is because our 6 extra ambulances or our surge ambulances, the 3 AMR, the 2 core, and then now the surge ambulance we have in Kalihi, because those are based mostly in downtown, we can more, I think it's safer to close an ambulance in town per se because we have the backup right there.
Okay.
So AMR has 1 unit in the Waipio area, 1 unit at the airport, and 1 unit in Nu'uanu that every day that back us up for surge. And then the 2 cores run out of Ivale.
Okay, so, and you mentioned that you had the perfect storm, but since then you've been able to address that. So I'm wondering, have you been able to fill those vacant positions? And also, how are you able to recover the staffing shortages that were created for different reasons?
I think the biggest thing is we have the lowest vacancy rate we've had probably in 20 years today, and we project that's going to continue to improve over the next 6 months with the 13 new employees we're going to get in 2 weeks and the 24 that are going to start in July. But EMS, number one, people retire, and that's just normal attrition. But EMS is a hard, stressful job. It takes a lot to become a paramedic, and mentally and emotionally, it takes a lot to stay as a paramedic. And we have a great team, but we do lose people. We lose people to other healthcare fields. We lose people to the fire department. Some people just say this isn't for us, and they get into completely different professions. And we understand that. Again, because EMS is hard, it's not for everybody. But we do have to keep up with aggressive hiring to maintain this workforce. And I think that's why 2 years ago we started our own academy, our own training program, because that really was the key to getting our vacancies filled. Because as good as KCC was, I went to KCC, Ian went to KCC, that's where we got our training. But as good as they were, they couldn't keep up with us. They weren't putting out enough students, and we don't get to hire all their students. Some go to AMR, some go to the fire department, some go to ocean safety, they go other places. So we had to do something ourselves to augment what the community training program. And I think right now we have the right mix and a successful recipe going forward.
Okay, I wanted to, if you could explain for the general public, because in our hearings and in general, when we hear you mention EMTs and paramedics, could you explain to the general public what they are and how they are different?
Sure, thank you. So an emergency medical technician, an EMT, has about 6 months of training. The program here is KCC, although there's plenty of other programs throughout the mainland and other things. But the primary program in Hawaii is KCC. It requires some prerequisites, medical terminology, I think English, and then it's a 1-semester program. Half the program is books and learning and classroom and practicing skills. And then the other half of the program is actual clinical time, where they ride on the ambulances as a student, they go to the ERs, they go to the operating room. When they graduate, we can hire them, and they can do basic life support. So they can do CPR, they can do bandaging, they can give oxygen, they can do some limited drugs, Narcan being one of them, start IVs. And then generally, they can spend their career as an EMT, or they can go on to paramedic school. So if you want to become a paramedic, usually we require 1 to 2 years of work experience as an EMT before you go to paramedic school. So, year 1, you're in training. Year 2 and 3, you're working for us as an EMT, and then year 4, you go to paramedic school.
And then so a paramedic would then be what? So that basic life skills of the EMT student, you mentioned student, they can do limited drugs, Narcan, but apparently we all can give the Narcan out, and they can go on to be a paramedic. So a paramedic then, the difference is there.
Oh yeah, paramedic, they can do basically things that doctors only used to be able to do. They can do endotracheal intubation, which is a breathing tube. They can put a needle in your chest if you have what's called a pneumothorax. They can give a wide variety of drugs in different situations. They can do what's called cardioversion or defibrillation. And so that's advanced life support. And all of those things are generally things in the past only physicians could do. So they work under a physician's license to do advanced life support. But if anyone here wanted to become a paramedic today, it would take about 4 years.
Okay, thank you. Are you staffing any of the units with just EMTs and not paramedics? Because what you just said is the really life-saving skills come under the paramedic, not the EMTs. Are you manning any of the units because there is a shortage in various times for different reasons without paramedics and just EMTs?
We are. So the ambulance that we opened up this year is a basic life support ambulance. We call it Medic 44.
Is that the little SUV? Or is this an ambulance?
No, it's an ambulance, and it has 2 EMTs. By state law, any ambulance has to have at least 2 EMTs on board to be licensed as an ambulance. So they're a basic life support ambulance. However, we also have a paramedic in an SUV that if that basic life support ambulance goes on a call and a paramedic is needed, the paramedic can come separately in the SUV. However, about a third of our calls are basic life support. And so it's not necessary to have a paramedic ambulance at every single call. And our dispatch does triage over the phone where they generally know in advance when they can send the basic life support ambulance.
And you haven't run into issues with that? You're saying that you can get the paramedic there in time. There's no instances where that wasn't the best call because they needed somebody right away?
Well, there's a few options. If the BLS ambulance gets to a scene and the patient needs advanced life support, one option would be to call the SUV paramedic, or all of our district chiefs are paramedics, so any of them can go assist the basic life support ambulance. Or they can call the SUV with the paramedic in it that's not a district chief. That's one option. The second option is they can just call for an advanced life support ambulance to come to the scene with them. And then the third option—
When you say they, who is they?
The EMTs on the basic life support ambulance. And then the third option is, for instance, if they are hypothetically 5 minutes from an emergency room, but an advanced life support ambulance is going to take 10 minutes to get there, it may be better for them just to package the patient and get them to the ER where there's doctors and nurses rather than wait for an advanced life support ambulance.
Okay, so from what you're saying, there has been no issues or controversy with staffing just EMTs?
No, and I don't think has been any issues. There have been times when they got there and they felt the patient needed a higher level of care, and the decisions EMTs make were to just go expeditiously to an ER that was close rather than wait 10 or 15 or 20 minutes for an ALS ambulance.
Great.
So it happens, but I don't think it's—
You transitioned perfect to my next question, going to an ER. So thank you, Dr. Ireland. When you have an ambulance go to a person to get that patient, what is the department's policy on diversion? What is divert or reroute status for a hospital to get to an ER?
So historically, we would allow the hospitals to tell us when they were on reroute. But what we were finding is some hospitals would go on reroute for days. And it would impact all the other hospitals, and the other hospitals would want to go on reroute. And essentially, everybody would just want to go on reroute.
Can you explain what reroute is again for the general public?
Reroute is basically a hospital saying, we're too busy to take any more patients, we don't have any more beds, and we don't want you to come here with your patient. That's what it is.
And the hospital historically would do that?
Correct. So about 1.5 years ago or so, we said, look, we're not going to recognize you ERs just saying you can't take patients. It's going to be more of a collaborative decision because, like I said, pretty soon all the ERs are on reroute and there's nowhere to go anymore. So most recently what we are doing now is we're working with the ERs to allow them to go on reroute in certain situations for a select period of time, whether it's an hour or 6 hours, but not 3 days. The other thing we're doing is we call it round robin, but it's basically a distributive program where and I'm just going to use town as an example, if Queens and Straub are completely overwhelmed and we have ambulance calls in town, we may tell our crews, now if it's a life-threatening critical emergency, the crews can go to the nearest hospital to save the life. But we're talking about non-life-threatening emergencies, maybe some mild asthma, broken ankle, gout pain, stuff that's not critical life and death. In the round-robin situations, what we'll do is we'll tell our crews, we're going to distribute patients away from Queens and Straub. I'm just using them as an example because they're so overwhelmed. And by overwhelmed, what I mean is some of the ERs on Oahu were not letting the patient out of the ambulance for 3 hours
So the patient would just sit in the ambulance?
in the parking lot of the ER.
Sorry, so if I could clarify, the hospital says reroutes, but you decide to go anyway because of the
This is before
situation.
they asked
This is
for
before.
reroute.
Okay,
So they're basically
But
saying,
now-
we're going to take the patient, but you're going to have to wait in the ambulance until we can, because there's physically no beds. And so we were having crews stay in the ambulance for 1, 2, and even over 3 hours, patient in the ambulance in the parking lot of the ER. And we went, with the Healthcare Association, the DOH, and the hospital executives and said, look, we have to do something different. We can't have ambulances out of service for that long, and it's not good for patients to sit in the ambulance for that long.
that makes sense.
So-
do you divert them to another hospital?
So that's what we're doing now. So, well, no, once you're on the property of that hospital, EMTALA
can't.
laws say you have to stay there.
Oh.
Yeah. So what we're doing now is using the example of Queens and Straub just being overwhelmed. We're telling the ambulance paramedics to use other hospitals, and we do it on a rotational basis. So from town, we'll tell them, go to Kuakini next, go to Kaiser next, go to Castle next. And we'll rotate amongst those 3 ERs. And then as, for instance, Queens and Straub get less busy, then we'll put them back into the rotation. But we may only bring 1 to Straub, 1 to Queens, 1 to Kuakini, 1 to Kaiser, 1 to Castle in patients from, let's say, from Waikiki until the situation stabilizes. We're also having to do that on the west side. Sometimes it's Queens West, to a lesser extent Polimomi, and sometimes even Wahiawa. They're getting overwhelmed. Queens West had a census of 90 patients in the ER 2 days ago. And that's for something like 25 beds. So at that point, it's just not.
And you're just sitting outside then, or?
No. At that point, we're not going to take patients there anymore unless they're critical. So we're going to use, again, Wahiawa, Polimomi,
Okay.
and Kaiser. So we're doing this round robin now sporadically to help work collaboratively with the ERs so they can still give high level of care, and we may have to drive a little further to the ER, but we know we're going to offload the patient immediately, and the ER staff is going to be able to attend to them immediately.
Okay. Okay, so my last line of questioning is going to be a follow-up. Thank you for explaining that. Following up on our hearing from last week, we had a joint budget and public safety hearing. And in that hearing, you stated that $48 million has been collected so far from the ambulance, I guess, pickups. And you expect to be at $80 million at the 2-year mark on June 30th, 2024. This is from the hearing. And you also stated that there was negotiation with Medicare on payment for transports in the early days of the new contract. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the time period of those Medicare transports?
So we do have a period. Medicare allows you to bill backwards 1 year. And so we have, is it 4 months?
6.
No, but beyond the year.
6. Oh, at this point.
Anyhow, there's a period of time, and I can get you the exact number, that's more than 12 months.
More than 12 months.
Where we, under normal Medicare rules, wouldn't be allowed to bill. So we actually appealed that, and we're waiting to hear back on the appeal to recover those funds that extend beyond the 12 months in arrears.
So does that mean that there are still transports you've provided for the community during the fiscal year 2023, which was going on to 2 fiscal years prior to this, that have not been paid by Medicare? And
Yes.
possibly other insurance companies?
Yes.
Okay. So if the state gave ESD money, that does not mean the state paid for those transports.
They gave us money to cover the gap because they knew potentially there would be a gap when we change over from their biller to our biller because of the procurement process and the time it takes to get a Medicare number, et cetera.
Okay, this is the state subsidy.
Correct.
Okay, this is the gap, got it. But Medicare insurance companies still owe us for these transports.
Correct.
Okay, so how much more does Medicare and maybe even other insurance companies owe us?
I think, I can get you the exact numbers, but I remember it to be somewhere around 20 million plus or minus, but I'll get you the exact number.
Okay.
But we do, looking at what we transport, what we bill, what we collect, we estimate we'll collect about $42 million a year in ambulance transport revenue going forward.
Going forward? But is that money that hasn't been collected?
Well, no, we're collecting in arrears too, but I just mean The reason we anticipate collecting more money is because, number one, the transports are up by 10% a year on average.
And is that money included in the proposed budget?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, the state every year increases the ambulance rate. Now, that doesn't mean we collect that increase, but it does mean, like, for commercial insurance, workman's comp, and no-fault insurance, we will collect a potentially 10% higher rate.
So I was wondering because actually I had a daughter once that had to ride an ambulance a long time ago, and I was surprised at the bill. But are these patients notified that their bill has not been paid yet by Medicare, that the service was not paid for? I honestly, I'll be honest, I don't know if I would have followed up and paid attention.
For the majority, I don't think so. But the other thing we're doing is we are working out a program where there is an avenue for bill forgiveness for people in certain types of hardships. And so that will be an avenue. I think we've probably got 4 or 5 calls from people in total, which is not many for 60,000 transports, but of people who have billing concerns.
And then there are still some who maybe have not received their bill yet.
Correct.
So have they been notified that their copay or deductible might be coming?
They have received it?
Sorry. Again, Ian Santee, Deputy Director, Emergency Services Department.
Thank you, Deputy Director.
Everybody got their bill, but the part that's in question, as Dr. Arlen alluded to, is from July 1st of 2022 to this January,
2024.
I think it's 13 of 2023.
Okay.
That's the only part that's in question. It's a 7-month period there that the Medicare goes.
That's when they transferred from the state to us.
That was from the transfer to the state. We started this process back in, and just to clarify, we started this process back in 2021 when the law was passed and we did an RFI. The billing company was not awarded the contract because of the procurement process until October of 2023, which is already 4 months into the fiscal year where we were supposed to be billing. We already
So what happened with that 4 months?
That's what's in question.
Okay.
That's what the appeal
And
is.
how do we know when we're going to get the billing? You said those bills were already
Those bills
given.
were all sent. All bills were
Okay.
sent out of August, October, August of last year. So around that time period last year, all the bills went out to everybody. But then again, it's the timely filing, as Dr. Ireland pointed out, that's in question because of the way the Medicare number was filed. We weren't approved for Medicare back until August of last year.
So I guess I'm trying to get to the point, and I think Dr. Arlen mentioned it. What happens if the Medicare and other insurances don't end up paying for the bills? They don't pay for their portion. I think you mentioned, is there like a forgiveness? Is that what happens? What if they don't pay us for the transports
Because
from the
we're
past?
participating in Medicare, that's our avenue for billing people with Medicare. We can't then go around them and say, you owe us cash payment because Medicare won't pay, because we are participating in Medicare. So the avenue is an appeal, which we've done, and we are looking at other ways to maybe enhance the favorability of that outcome in the appeal with additional documentation.
I guess it's just to close, my concern is that there is a variance of about 29 million loss in revenue from that fiscal year 23 when the shifting happened. And that's a huge concern for me, especially when we're looking at forward and the budget's being tight. So that's where I'm trying to figure out, how do we mitigate this or minimize the loss that we're expecting?
Well, number one is that's part of the reason for the state stipend, which covered a lot of that, if not most, going backwards 3 years. But also, there are other avenues to enhance revenue collections for our ambulance service, and that would be, I think we discussed it before, giving a bill for treatment without a transport. And the other thing is the city could raise the rates higher than the state has set, but that would have to be, the council doing that, setting the fee.
Which I'm not always in favor of, but I hope that we can make sure that we do better in the future, because this is a concern if we're going to be losing money based on lapses in billing.
No, I agreed.
But thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Chair. Director, regarding CORE, how many people are on a CORE team?
So on the ambulance, it's 2 EMTs, and oftentimes they have 1 or 2 community health workers with them. And they'll go out and engage somebody. They do the medical treatment like wound care, but getting into the CORE system then with the other community health workers, they will do things like take them to a doctor's appointment, help them pick up meds, help them sign up for benefits. And then there's the actual just community health worker teams that are not on the ambulance, and that's usually walking teams that are walking through Chinatown or Waikiki or various neighborhoods, and that also is 2 or 3 people.
Okay, so you're looking at about seven per core team.
Yes, approximately.
So, and you said we have about 36 now?
35, yes.
35. Okay, so like, do we have stats on how many individuals core serviced in the last year, and how many of them are repeat users?
We do, and I can get that to you.
Okay, perfect. Are we making a difference in reducing homelessness? Is there anything else you see the city can do to really address the issues of the homeless population?
Well, I think one thing is the point in time count most recently didn't show as high a jump as some other cities in the mainland. So that could be considered a success that it didn't go higher, significantly higher. But we see individual victories. But again, what I've told a lot of people is we can show numbers and we can show data, but people want to be able to drive down King Street without seeing tents on the sidewalk. People want to be able to go to our beach parks without seeing, large encampments. And so I think CORE is a important piece of the solution, but the next piece, and something that I think we're going to see a lot of traction in the next 6 months, is getting places for people to live. More shelter space, kauhales, respite, and I think that's going to make the biggest difference moving forward in the next 6 months compared to the previous years.
Just an idea, what if, so that's 5 teams. What if we take 2 or 3? Because I think for my community, they just want to see boots on the ground. I want to see people engaging with this community, building a relationship. What if we had like 2 or 3 core people in each of our district? I mean, if you guys are working alongside service providers already, right? And you're doing basically the medical thing, right? Like wrapping up wounds. For instance, in Waipahu, we're doing this thing called Win Back Waipahu, and I think I shared it with you guys. And one of the things we want to do is try to educate the businesses. When a homeless individual is laying in front of the business, who to call? Are they calling CORE or are they calling homeless services? So again, it's an idea. What do you think if we put core people, we have 35 now, in the hard Waianae, Waipahu, well, it's everywhere now, right? What if, just an idea, if they tagged along with the service provider already in the district? Because from what I understand, Kealoha, the ones that service us now, it's like 2 providers per 100, 2 providers that takes care of 100 homeless individuals. Is there any opportunity of maybe doing something like that?
I think so. And one of the approaches we've had is to take the whole team, 30 people, to a community for 2 days and just saturate. Mm-hmm. But having a more persistent presence with smaller teams is actually something we definitely want to look into.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, again, one of the, I can just say for Waipahu, I don't know about my colleagues' district, but a lot of the members are burnt out, and they just see people engaged in the community. And I think having boots on the ground, seeing core people in their red shirts out and about in our community will make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Talba. Next, we'll go to Councilmember Say, and then we'll,
Good morning, Dr. Ireland, and thank you very much for your service along with Deputy Director Santi and the staff who is here. My only concern is that no matter what happens in the out years, have we talked to Department of Health at the state level in regards to the Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement, or will that be Department of Human Services?
Well, Medicaid rates could be changed legislatively, and I understand that California.
I'm not saying that. I'm just looking at the bleeding. you stated earlier this past 2-3 years about the reimbursements for Medicaid, Medicare is much lower than private insurance.
Way lower, absolutely.
So who makes up the difference as far as what the cost is? Are we giving preferential treatment to our Medicaid, Medicare recipients? And if we are subsidizing them.
Well, our option is to not participate with Medicare and Medicaid, but then in those situations, the patient would be responsible for the whole bill and probably give us an earful.
I know, I agree with you, but my point is what you were trying to address when CORE was first started was to offset our EMS taking these homeless to Queens Hospital, which is the only psychiatric hospital in Honolulu. Am I correct?
Correct, in Honolulu and then Castle on the windward side, yeah.
And then that particular cost to the ambulance was a high amount of money where there is no reimbursement. And that's what I'm trying to share with Councilwoman Tupola, how important CORE was in offsetting the visits by our ambulance with homeless patients.
That's true.
But my concern today is that how are we going to address the bleeding of the differential? Because we have a fixed cost of what you have as far as your program, meaning the emergency medical services, correct? And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help you. Is it that we got to go to the state to ask them that they increase the reimbursement level? I don't know. But if you need my help, I'll be more than happy to talk to Governor Green, because we are addressing the patients that he's addressing to, the homeless, the houseless, etc. And that is a concern, because you and I know that medical insurance rates are going to go up no matter what. And how do I make up that loss on behalf of the operations of the city and county of Honolulu? Like I shared with Deputy Director Santi, no matter what I do, I get criticized. When I said last year how important it was for the 14% increase in our real property tax assessments, that was all for collective bargaining. It was all for county services. That's where I'm trying to protect my colleagues who are here today. That next year, when you come before us for the 26th fiscal year, I hope it's not going to be a larger deficit or whatever we have to find from the real property tax fund to pay for the services that we're providing to those category of individuals. So just keep up the good work. I believe CORE has done a great job. Your presence, like what Councilmember Tobo said, is true. Get out there, with your boots on the ground and just tell people this is what we're doing for CORE. The other one I think will come up next is Hono. The people of Mo'iliili would like to see Hono back at Stadium Park in addressing the homeless situation there at Mo'iliili Stadium and the Bolodrome, or whatever that bowling alley is, that Hawaiian home has property title to it. So I'm not going to ask any questions, just to say thank you to you and your deputy and the staff who is here. It's a thankless job, and just keep up the good work. Keep your chin up and just smile for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, so we're ending our first round. I'll just submit questions. I'll just go on to the next round. Councilmember Tupola.
Thanks so much, Chair. Yes, keep your chin up. Dr. Eileen, you're doing great. I do believe, and I did say that I know that it can decrease the hospital costs, so I'm just going to ask one more follow-up question. How does CORE factor into a citywide homeless plan, and where can we find that written?
I'll get you what we have written so far, but I'll tell you that, we did open up on Pauahi Street the homeless CORE/Jabsam Home Clinic. It's moving to Iwalei out of Chinatown. But we take people in the CORE ambulance to that clinic instead of Straub, Queens, and Kuakini ERs. So that is saving Medicaid thousands and thousands of dollars with each of those transports. And that's happening, if not every day, many times during the week. So
I guess what I'm trying to ask, because I do want to wait for your CORE report, is there a homeless plan for the city?
Yes, and that's under Director Crucky, and we're just one piece of that.
Okay, well, I hope to see that because I do hear what everyone's saying. And I think to your point about that people want to see areas cleared, the reason why I would like to work with you guys more is because the program I run is called Restore, Reconnect, Revive. And the restore part is me working with DPR, where we take beach park by beach park and we move in small segments and we address in a block span the individuals that are there and then move to the next block until we are able to restore public spaces to the public. And so because we've been doing this project for the past 2 years, it's been helpful, and I'd like you guys to be a part of it because the public can actually see differences, which is kind of what they want, right? We want homeless to receive assistance, but people want public spaces back. So I think working in concert with you guys, I can kind of show you what we've seen be successful, but it really is interdepartmental, meaning that without DPR, without HPD, without DFM, we can't do it all together. And of course, like I said, we have tons of providers, but also every business in Waianae is helping me. They are hiring people for me. So people right in front of the area we're servicing, I'm asking them to do the hiring. I call the owners, make sure that they're giving jobs, because that's not anything I expect you guys to do. But I think it helps the overall picture, right, of bringing purpose and bringing life back to someone and not just wound care. So,
And I do agree that the public deserves and has the right to feel safe in public spaces and at their beach parks and in their own community. Absolutely.
thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. Any other questions for second round? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Ireland. We really appreciate you and your team for being here, and look forward to any other questions if we do have any for you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, council members.
Next up, we will have, how's everyone doing? Does anyone need a 5-minute break? Okay, while HPD is coming up, I'm gonna have to recess because I don't have a vice chair and I really have to just take a 5-minute break. Okay, I'm gonna recess subject to order of the chair. like to call the Committee on Budget back to order. Next and last department that we have is the Honolulu Police Department. Their departmental communications is D153. With us, we have Deputy Chief Vanek with us for the presentation. And also, if you would like to introduce who you have with us as your team as well.
Hello, good morning. As stated, I'm Deputy Chief Roddy Vanek for the Honolulu Police Department. I oversee the administrative operations. With me, to my left, is Major Elgin Arquero of our Finance Division. I also have Captain Ryan Hiranaka from our Finance Division and Ms. Kristen Rothermill from our Finance Division. Chief Aaron Takasaki Young, who's in charge of our Administrative Bureau, and Chief Darren Chun, who is in charge of our Special Field Operations Bureau. Chair Cordero, Vice Chair Wire, council members, thank you for the opportunity to present the budget this year. If I could direct your attention to our slides. So as you can see, for the 2024-2025 budget changes, our 2025 request is a total of $371 million, which represents about a 4.69% increase. If you take a look at the salaries, a majority of that is attributed to salaries, a $14.68 million increase, which is primarily as a result of CBA collective bargaining agreement increases across the board. You see an actual decrease in current expense. That $3.312 million, that's as a result of last year when we requested for funding to accommodate our weapons refresh. We're still currently working with the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services to make sure that we don't lapse those monies, and we're hopeful that we should be able to spend those monies before the end of the fiscal year, and we'll start our weapons refresh during our annual recall training for our personnel. For equipment, you can see last fiscal year, we didn't receive anything for equipment. This fiscal year, the increase is primarily due to a change in the way we acquire our vehicles. In previous years, they were part of our capital improvement plan projects, and this year they were switched to current expense or operating budget. So that's a reason, a majority of the increase for equipment. And in upcoming slides, I'll go over some of the other major equipment acquisitions. Moving on to the next page. As far as significant budget issues, so obviously I'll go over some of the vacancies on future slides, but we're not requesting to create any new positions. Some of the major projects that we're working on is the microfiche and microfilm conversion to digital. So in the past, we've received proposals that were upwards of about $1 million, but due to technology advances, that amount has been reduced to approximately $400,000. So we feel that it's the right time to do it. In addition to that, the quality of our microfilm is deteriorating. And just to explain, the microfilm and microfiche is the medium that was used at the time to store old reports. And by law and our policies and procedures, we're required to keep some of those documents for ever. But converting the microfilm to a digital format and then storing them onto our servers will ensure the preservation and longevity of those reports that we're required to keep. And I'd like to point out also that when the microfilm deteriorates, the information contained on the microfilm cannot be recalled, and we're reaching that point. So it's imperative that we start that project. You also see there, for the past couple of years, we've been asking for a fuel management system at about $600,000. So right now, our current system is no longer supported. Many of the stations that are using the fuel management system are experiencing issues, and the system has stopped working altogether. So they went from using the fuel management system to actually pen and ink on pad. So that's something that we feel is of utmost importance. By replacing the system, that'll help us to be more efficient in the amount of fuel, not only that we use, but being able to track it, the amount that we have to order moving forward. That'll also help in the city's efforts to reduce the amount of fuel that we use and move towards electrification. So that is in line also with the city's priorities. And of course, for patrol vehicles, you see there, as I mentioned earlier, that switched from our CIP to operating budget. We are currently on a replacement cycle. The replacement cycle is designated to reduce repair costs, fleet downtime, vehicle shortages, and excessive use of newer patrol vehicles that would significantly reduce their service life. Continuing to overuse current fleet vehicles could compromise the safety of our officers who use them. And the cost per vehicle, which is about $90,000, that includes everything that is needed to operate the vehicle. So that's the radios, accessories, prisoner restraints, graphics, emergency lighting, siren, communication, mounting equipment, and so forth. I think we're looking to purchase approximately 50 vehicles in the for that proposed amount. Moving on to the next slide. So I'll get into our vacancies. I'll start with our civilian positions. So civilian vacant positions as of February 2nd, we have about 178. That also represents the deletion of 14 deactivated positions which don't receive funding. There are 0 positions that we've abolished. Prior to the end of the fiscal year, we anticipate filling about 19 positions, and during the next fiscal year, we anticipate filling 70. Moving on to uniform position vacancies. So as of February 2nd, there were 407 positions. That reflects a deletion of 21 deactivated positions. Again, those deactivated positions don't receive funding, with 0 positions being abolished. We currently have 97 recruits in training, although that doesn't count towards our position vacancies. Those are what we consider are called ghost positions. When an individual is hired and goes into our training pool, they don't actually occupy a P number. They're part of our training positions. And when they finish their training, which is usually about a year to a year and a half after they've passed probation, gone through field training, an evaluation program, and also what we call fourth watch, or where they start to spread their wings. Shortly after that, then they're assigned to their final or their initial permanent position, which is when they occupy a position number or P number, and that's when they count against our vacancies. We have 18 recruits who just came out of fourth watch or are about to come out of fourth watch. We have a transfer period or push that will take effect this Sunday, so that will then count against our vacancies. Our next promotion/transfer period in which recruits will come out of their training period is scheduled for July, and then we have another one at the end of the year around November. Our classes we've seen increases in the number of recruits that we're able to hire for our classes, and also the attrition rate has gone down. A couple of years ago, it was so the attrition rate, well, our retention rate was in the 60 percentile. We lost maybe between 30 to even, in some cases, 40% of our recruits. But because of some changes that we've made, mentoring programs, adopting an idea of not trying to weed out those who don't belong, but keep as many as we can. Of course, there's still going to be attrition. This police work is very difficult. It's just not for everyone. But our attrition rate actually dropped, and now our attrition rate is closer to the national average, actually better than the national average. For example, the last class, we had a retention rate of about 90%. Even the current class, they started with 21. They have about a month left to go, and we have 20. So we've seen our attrition rate go down, and that's helped to increase our numbers. What we're also looking at doing is working on retention, especially in the early stages, where once they get into the department, they don't just come here to train and then go to the mainland and use their training at other departments. So we're working with the Department of Human Resources, Budget Fiscal Services, Mayor's Office, and CORE we've worked with to offer hiring and retention incentives, which we're very close to, will probably be announced, and we'll start advertising very shortly we're hoping that will help with enticing more people. I can tell you with other efforts, and I can go over some of those efforts in questions if you have later in detail. We've seen an increase in our applications. So this January compared to last January, we've seen an increase in about 14%. And in February, the month of February, this February compared to last February, we've seen actually an increase in applications of about 28%. During 2022, our recruitment team did about 60 recruitment efforts. In 2023, we more than doubled that. And also the size of our recruitment team, we nearly doubled that. So we attribute that to some of the increased numbers that we're seeing. Moving on to the next slide. So non-holiday overtime by fund. You see for 2025, we're requesting a little over 31 million, 29 of that coming from the general fund, highway, and then 2.3 coming from the highway fund. That's relatively close and pretty flat to what we've requested last year. Our overtime hours are estimated by calculating the average percentage of each rank working overtime over a three-year period. And then we take that average step for each rank to get an hourly pay rate. And then based on that, using the requested funding for overtime, we split that up into each rank by the percentage that they work, and then we divide that by the hourly rate. So that's how we get those numbers. But as you can see, it's, again, I want to point out that it's still remaining pretty stagnant. Of course, the overtime rate as we start, or the overtime amount as we start to fill our vacancies, we're hopeful that that will go down because you'll have more officers being able to work the shifts, thereby needing to pay less overtime. Moving on to the non-holiday overtime by activity. So you can see that a majority of that is in patrol, about 21.9 million, and then the rest is broken down into the other activities, with the second highest being investigations. Our investigative divisions include Narco Vice Division, our Criminal Investigation Division, and Traffic Division. Moving on to holiday overtime by fund, so just like EMS, our holiday overtime fund is dictated by collective bargaining, CBA. So there's the breakdown from the general fund versus highway fund. One of the reasons why there's an increase this year is because our holiday overtime, so the general fund, well, let me go the other way. Highway fund is used for our traffic division that comes out of a separate fund. General fund, it basically is used for everything else. But the general fund, our patrol falls under that too. So last fiscal year, we moved from the 5-9 schedule to the three-day, 13-hour schedule. So we're paying our patrol officers, particularly when they're working because of CBA, we're paying them more hours for holiday. So that's what most of that increase is attributed to. And the holiday overtime by activity. So as I had mentioned from the previous slide, patrol, you'll see that's where a majority of the increase is coming from. Most of the other activities you'll see remain relatively flat. Going to our HPD equipment acquisition, so as I had mentioned earlier, so the patrol vehicles, like I said, went from CIP budget to operating budget. So that's 4.275 million. Our fuel management system, which I described earlier, why we need it, that's 600,000. Our backup storage replacement, as with all IT, usually once you buy it, it's already obsolete. But we require in the next fiscal year to update our servers. So that's the cost there. And then security trailers. So what this is it's basically message boards and also presents. Similarly, like to what you see in like a Walmart parking lots with like blue lights, we can strategically place them at different locations. We can also use them to announce messages. We can put them at like lookouts. We can put them at different sides of the roads. So this is something that's new for us. We want to try this based on input from the community, input actually from even council members. In our upcoming budget, we want to try this as a pilot program, see how it works, and maybe in future fiscal years, if it works out well, then you'll probably see continued requests for funding for additional trailers. Under revenue sources, HPD is not considered typically a revenue source generating department, but we do have some. So you'll see, basically I'll just go over what each of the categories are and explain to you how we get those. So for licenses and permits, those are exactly kind of what is indicated. That's from like firearms licenses, alarm permits, which is required by law. For charges for services, there are several different things that fall under that. So for example, if there's a dishonor check, copy of records, so when people won't need police reports, alarm service charges, special duty fees fall under that also, and HPD parking, headquarter parking lot. Those are fees there. For fines and forfeits, those are for alarm fines and also forfeitures of seized properties. For miscellaneous, the major one there is sundry refunds, which is refunds from grants. So basically how that turns into revenue is if for whatever reason the grant reimbursement comes after the fiscal year, we're not allowed as a department to utilize those funds for our operating budget. That goes back into the general fund and turns into revenue. So the reason why you see a decrease is, if you remember a couple years ago when I gave this presentation, one of the things that I said is we're going to work with our finance division to make sure that we make the purchases which require refunds earlier in the year, and also make sure that we are more aggressive in our request for reimbursement. Well, that happened. So now you see that we actually receive refunds on a more timely basis. COVID also had an effect on that, where we weren't always able to get refunds in a timely manner, but since COVID, the departments or the agencies which we receive refunds from has been better, so we get those in a more timely manner. We can use that in our operating budget, so instead of it going back to the general fund, we're able to use it for police services. And then also finally parking, that's pretty self-explanatory. We handle street parking meters, damaged parking meters. Some of the lots include Kuhio, Kaiolu, Kaimuki, Kailua, Kalakaua, Civic Center parking lots. Yeah, so just various parking lots across the city. And then finally, I'll go over our capital improvement projects. So in the past, we've had two major bulk funds. One is for the HPD main station and the other is for all other stations. This year, we still have those bulk funds, but we also have a couple other added projects, which are high cost issues and also priorities, not only for the department, but for the city. So one is the first one is the HPD headquarter annex. This is a property that's located right across the street from the main station. It's directly, if you can envision the area, Diamond Head, towards Thomas Square. So that property has become available in the 32 years that we've been. So we opened our station in 1992. There hasn't been any properties in that particular area that have become available. This is the first one in 32 years. And we feel that if we don't take advantage of this opportunity, we'll lose out. Because of its proximity, it's an ideal location. We plan on using it in the immediate for storage. We definitely have parking issues at our main station. There's other storage issues and warehouse issues, and I'll go over one of the other projects that we're working on related to that. But this is a very good opportunity for us to get this and looking towards the future of the department and how we can assist the community in what we do. So this is a real big purchase for us. And this is, like I said, this is something that took 30 years to become available. So it's very imperative and important that we act on this while we have the opportunity. The other projects so this is the HPD headquarters. This is one of the bulk funds that existed before. The major project that we're working on is correct building leaks. So as I said, our building opened back in 1992, so it's 32 years old. There's a lot of major leaking issues, other issues. So this is one project that we have going on. It's in the construction phase that will help to correct those issues. And then of course, as we do every year, we have some monies allocated for unanticipated mechanical electrical. If the air handlers go down or something unanticipated comes up, we have funding to take care of that. One of the other large projects that we have that we don't typically have during other fiscal years is the Pearl City Police Station. So that has been in the planning stage for a little while, and now we're finally ready to move forward to the design phase. So we have monies allocated, or we're requesting for monies to be allocated for that, to design a sustainable and resilient replacement for the Pearl City Police Station. And as I had said prior when talking about that, that property that's adjacent to our current station, we currently are leasing space because our evidence storage within the main police station is very near capacity. We're probably about 97, 98% full, and we're required by law to keep a bunch of the evidence that we have, not only for cases, but for other type of criminal prosecution. So we do have outside warehouses that we need in order to satisfy what we need to do in order to bring these cases to prosecution. We do see that having a police evidence warehouse of our own can supplement what we already have and also help to reduce or eliminate even the need to lease warehouse space, which would actually save the city quite a bit of money. So that's one of the projects that's in the design phase. And then finally, we have so this is one of the other bulk funds that we've had over the years. This is for police stations or buildings other than the main police station. And so the one project that we have going on here is the Chinatown Police Station improvement. That's in the construction phase. The request is for $1.5 million. That basically has to do with the hardening of the Chinatown Police Station. I know if you have an opportunity to go past the police station, you'll see, well, it seems dark at night. The blinds are always down. Why can't we open that up, lighten it up? Well, there's some safety reasons for that. This is to address those safety issues. So we're hoping that with the completion of construction, that'll make the Chinatown substation a more vibrantly used and improve the appearance. Also, the unanticipated mechanical, electrical, plumbing improvements for all the other police stations other than the main police station. And that completes my presentation. I'm available for questions if you have them.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Bannock. I really appreciate your presentation and for your team being here. First up, we have Councilmember Say, followed by Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, followed by Councilmember Topola.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So, Deputy Chief Bannock, I have a question in regards to page 2 of your budget changes.
Sorry, Councilmember, what page was that?
Page 1.
Okay.
Let's start off with page 1, the budget changes. Now, I'm just looking at your current expense of $3.3 million. That is a change of a deletion. When you say you're gonna, is it meaning that you're gonna lapse it?
No. Thank you for that question, Councilmember Say. So the not all of it, right? A majority of that, the 3.3, or that's all for the refresh. That was all. Okay, so the $3.312 million was, I wouldn't say earmarked, but what we requested it for was our weapons refresh. The specific weapon that we have now, we've had for quite a period of time. The weapon that we had before that, we've had for about the same number of times, so it's about time for a refresh. Some of the issues with our current weapon is as far as being able to get parts when they go down. It's just time. We did a field test and field study, which took a little bit of time to do. We wanted to make sure that we did it right. Earlier this year, based on the field test and field study, we selected the weapon system that we wanted to use. Because of the amount that's past the deadline that usually BFS would like to expend or procure that amount of money. So that's why we're still working with BFS, because it is past the deadline. But that monies were, I don't want to say we're hoping, we're expecting that we're able to utilize those monies so that we can make the procurement prior to the end of this fiscal year, or at least encumber the funds so that we can use that for our weapons refresh system.
So would it be possible if the committee was to put in a proviso that if the money is not encumbered by June 30th of 2020, if the money is not encumbered by June 30th of 2024, it lapses back to the general fund, and then the council can use that money? Make sense?
Yes, that's, thank you.
Chair Cordero, you understand? Yeah. Okay. Next one was I have oh, you know, for your patrol vehicles, for the operating budget of 4.275 million, those particular patrol vehicles that are going to be replaced, do you folks go to Manheim auction to auction it off?
We do. So a majority of them are replaced because some of the vehicles that we use, based on mileage, based on other things, motor vehicle collisions, what have you, do require replacement. We want to make sure that we have our officers in the safest vehicle possible, and also the vehicles are in a condition that our officers can do their job to help keep the community safe. So some vehicles actually most vehicles are for replacement, but some vehicles are in addition to.
So can I use the money to balance our budget as far as the auction of the vehicles? You know, how much would people bid for a patrol vehicle, right? 20 years old, maybe 5,000-10,000. I don't know.
Yeah, you know,
I'm just wondering if that's
people buy them for different reasons too. Some are nostalgia, some to use. But yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, that's some money that we can use also. I'm just going down as far as your presentation. It was excellent, may I say. The other one that really concerned me was the funding for the non-holiday overtime by activity. Does this take, you know, it seems like the appropriation are basically all similar, but does this take into consideration your increase in collective bargaining, the salary? It does. But how come it's flat in some of them? You know, 1530, 235, Office of the Chief of Police, Police Commission, Patrol, yeah, 21.9 versus 21.4 a $500,000 increase. Is that reasonable, or how do we come up with that kind of a dollar amount?
So the dollar amount is based on a 3-year average, and while you are correct, we do have collective bargaining agreement increases. We're hoping that through other strategies, reallocating of resources, increase in the amount of individuals that we're hiring, that number can remain flat and still accomplish what we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Then the next page, the holiday overtime by fund. I did not understand your 5-day, 9 hours.
Oh, okay.
And the 3-day, 13 hours.
So our patrol units specifically were on what we call a 5-9 schedule. They worked 5 days a week, 9 hours.
Yeah.
And then on the second, that's correct. On the second week, then their last day, they worked 8 hours to make up the 40 hours during 2 weeks. What we did was we worked with the union because they wanted us to consider an alternate work schedule. So we initially piloted a 3-day, 12-hour work schedule, which turned into a 3-day, 13-hour work schedule. So that's currently what our patrol officers use. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One, we felt that it would be a morale booster because officers are working, even though it's longer days, it's less days, so they can spend more time on themselves, their families. And we have found that when we sent out a survey, over 75% of the officers who are working that very much so like that, that schedule. But what we had to do as a department was adjust because of the schedule. So one of the things related to the amount of overtime that we paid specifically for patrol officers for holiday pay.
Okay. Okay. And finally, the last one, which I'm very much intrigued about, is your security trailers. It's a pilot program.
Yes.
Is that the blue light that we see at, let's say, the Mo'ili parking lot?
Similar, maybe not exact, but it has those types of features.
The blue light.
Yes, Councilmember. Yes.
And then, you know who the vendor is?
You know, I don't, I know it's, because it's in the pilot phase, we may look at a couple different vendors, but it's something that we still need to go through the procurement for. There are a couple of different vendors that could be potentials, but that's something that we'd like to explore in the upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, and that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'd also like to welcome to the chamber Council Chair Waters. Next up, we have Council Vice Chair Kia Aina, followed by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam, followed by Councilmember DePola, then Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Chief Vanek, for your presentation. You know, I do know that you guys are doing your best with regard to filling all of the positions, right? And so I noticed in your budget that you're not even proposing any new positions. But I wanted to talk about the HPD's community policing team. For my district, they are so invaluable. In fact, very often they are the face of HPD. And they show up at our neighborhood boards and they assist our communities and our offices on a myriad of issues, whether ranging from homelessness, speeding, parking, public nuisances, neighborly disputes, et cetera. And, you know, pre-COVID for my district, and my district is, of course, from Makapu'u to Kahuku, nearly 40 miles, one of the largest district. We had 9 positions prior to COVID, and now we have 5. And so I guess I want to just put in a plug for wanting to get back to 9 positions. And so I guess I want to ask that before, you know you guys have a lot of vacancies. I want to know if it is the intent of HPD to fully staff my community policing team, or do I need to add 4 new positions?
Councilmember, thank you for that question. So, you know, I think we can accomplish that other than by adding more positions. I think that's more of a command decision, strategic decision to beef up or increase the officers that we currently have to do community policing team efforts. I think one of the things in Chief Logan's strategic plan is to increase the amount of community policing team and make all patrol officers, even community policing team officers. So one of the strategies could be to maybe, while they don't do it full time, because our primary objective is when someone calls 911, we want to make sure that they're not waiting an excessive period of time in order for them to receive service. However, the department does recognize that community policing team officers is imperative, and it's super important to be able to achieve our goals and missions. And it's one of the few units that is able to proactively take steps to not only improve relationships in the community, but also even reduce crime or prevent crime. So yes, I do think that increasing the amount of community policing team officers in each of the districts will help to achieve that. I'm just not sure, let me rephrase that. I don't think it's necessary to increase the number of positions that we currently have to achieve that. We can do that by utilizing the resources we already have. We just have to reprioritize and reallocate.
And I don't want to take away from the patrol officers. I may just offer the amendment anyway, because it is priority for my community, and then as it goes through the process, then I just would hope that you could take back to the leadership for my district that I would like to see that, so that I could have a level of confidence that, number one, I don't take away from the patrol officer vacancies, and then second, that indeed I can see a bump up, because I think separate from the invaluable job that they do in our communities, I believe that they help alleviate some of the priorities of the patrol officers as well. So it's a good balance, and I think it's good for your strategic planning purposes. But thank you guys again for all.
That is a follow-up from last year's budget cycle. Last May, it was reported that there were 38 vacancies among 911 dispatchers, and in the last year's budget, we as a council put in 220,000 additionally for and workload.
Councilman, thank you for that question. So that is an issue who would staff that position is unavailable. We have to have someone there. So that has turned into mandated overtime, which the dispatchers and their union have said, you know, they're okay with some of the time, but we as a department are starting to use that more often. And personally, for me, I think that's unacceptable. I know our dispatchers are dedicated in that, and you know what? I'm going to do what I need to do to help keep our community safe. I don't mind doing it 2, 3, 4 times, but if it's 50, 60 times, you know, at what point is enough enough? So some of the things that we've done in order to utilize the funds that were allocated for that was we've been working with HGA, the union, to offer a potential solution by offering maybe standby pay in teams. And let me explain that. So one of the problems is if I come in as a dispatcher and I'm told that day, hey, you know what, you gotta stay. That's hard because I may have had plans, I gotta pick up my kids, you know what, or I had a party to go to or something, now I can't do that. But if I'm able to tell you, okay, you know what, next week, hopefully that they're willing to accept. I know right now we're still talking with the union about that. I think there may be some sticking points, some sticking issues. We're also looking at increasing compensation to keep the compensation at a level for what they're doing. And they really do. I mean, they're unspoken heroes. You always hear about the officers who are doing heroic deeds and heroic acts, but it's the 911 call takers, it's our police communication officers that are behind the scenes that are also part of that solution. So that's one of the other things we're looking at, increased compensation as a result of some of the funds. But those are still things we're working towards, council member. We haven't given up, but I can tell you that it's still a challenge for our department.
And then would you happen to know offhand the current number of 911 dispatcher vacancies among the 178 civilian positions that you've indicated on your slide? I just want to be able to gauge whether this number has gone up or gone down in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, so we have 3 different levels of police communication officers. Our police communication officers 1, or call takers, there's 31 vacancies. 31 vacancies. Our PCO 2s, or those are the individuals who dispatch our officers, or call takers, there are 14 vacancies there. And our PCO 4s, or supervisors, there are 3 vacancies there for a total of 48 vacancies. We also have 911 ERO, so called the initial 911 call takers. There are 4 vacancies for ERO 1, 1 for ERO 2, for a total of 5.
So is this number, the number of vacancies gone up since last year?
You know, anecdotally speaking, I want to say it's remained relatively flat, which is not a good or bad thing because we want to actually see a decrease, yeah. So
yeah, we'd like to see that decrease as well. So we'll put that in writing if we could get that information from last year. Again, this I know how hard they work, and I want to make sure that they're as fully staffed as possible and fully supported as possible. So thank you.
Next, we have Councilmember Topola, followed by Councilmember Okimoto.
Thank you so much. Well, a few of my questions have already been answered for me. You guys
Okay.
are very proactive sending me my questions.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Surprise, surprise, I have one more.
No problem. Bring them.
So this is in regards to, we had a meeting with one, or maybe there were two officers from Maui, and we talked with them and the principal from, I think, Maui High about having a school resource officer in Nanakuli. So I don't want to take any of my patrol guys off. I cannot have any of my CPT guys go up there. Is there a possibility we could do like a 90-day contract hire special duty officer or something? And again, we're piloting it. We would have to do an MOU or MOA with the DOE, but we've done that before on other islands. What is your thoughts?
Well, thank you for that question. So, we've looked at that option. I think one of the things in order for school resource officers to be successful is to clearly define their role. I think if their role is to be used as security, that would be a poor use of resources. And the reason why I say that is because really if you have one or two officers and there's a larger fray in the school, really that shouldn't fall upon the officers to try and quell that. What I do see value in for school resource officers is someone who's a mentor, who's a guide, who is able to work with the students and administration to come up with programs and or initiatives that would help not just the students who are in the school at the time, but in the future, and even create those connections with community members and parents. But in order to do that, you need someone who is there consistently. With the special duty kind of mantra, if you use it the way we currently do special duty, those are different officers signing up for special duty all the time, so it may not be as
Well,
effective.
I think what I was suggesting though
Sure.
is the 90-day contract would be one person. So I'm not suggesting new people every day.
Sure.
And we did already have the meeting, and we got the list of responsibilities from MPD, and we also transmitted that to DOE. We got to look at their contract that they have between them and the DOE. So I think we're a few steps ahead because they just got a new principal. I don't know, I'm sure you know, but there was just a shooting this morning in front of the school. So we are at a high level of need, and I'm not saying we need it at all my schools, but I think we really need to do something. And to your point, we are talking about not being a security guard. We're talking about proactive work, working with families, resolving legal issues, seeing if there's additional counseling or substance abuse counseling that's needed, and kind of becoming that person that the kids can trust. So the officer that attended our meeting that does it from Maui High, he's also a football coach for the high school. So it's that kind of feeling, right? Almost like a PALS feeling, which that's kind of what we're looking for. And we think that it'll help in addition to the security guards they already have there. So would it be something that I don't even think we really need to put it in the budget? Because based upon your answers to everyone else here, it sounds like it would be a interdepartmental decision on how to move things. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we are considering 90-day contracts for individuals who are like retirees. That's one resource that I think that we can tap into.
Oh, yes.
So that is a possibility. And I like your idea that you realize that, yeah, it's not for security purposes, but it's for these other things. That's definitely something that I think we should explore and we will explore. And the 90-day contract is a convenient way to maybe at least just try it out, see how it works. And then if that does work, or maybe if we can possibly put in for specific positions for that specifically, that might be something that we can look at moving forward.
That'd be great. I mean, the superintendent was in the meeting for the Leeward Complex. She's in favor of it. I think because we have new leadership at the school, it'd be a good time. And we just need to get to the point where we stop reacting. Everyone is reacting. Every time something happens, we got to go address it. It's too late already. I'm not saying that we don't come and help. I'm saying, what are our proactive efforts? So if we can do something more proactive within the school as a pilot, I would be so grateful on behalf of my community. Thank you, Assistant Chief. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And next we have Councilmember Okimoto, followed by Council Chair Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Aloha, Assistant Chief.
Aloha.
I just had, I hope, some easy questions. I just want to follow up. Thank you again for your summary in the report. On your page for special field operations, it's mentioned that for the Community Affairs Division, and if I missed this in a previous question, I apologize, I had to step out. But you mentioned in the report that due to COVID-19, the CAD resources were redirected to assist with testing. Has those funds been restored to the Community Affairs Division?
Sorry, can you repeat your question? The
Okay.
CAD?
So yeah, and this is on page B219 of our budget, but the Community Affairs Division, it said that during COVID-19, the CAD resources were redirected to assist with COVID testing. I'm just following up to see if those funds were brought back to this division.
Sorry, I'm not aware that any monies were diverted from community affairs for that specific reason.
Okay, it's in the report, so maybe I can follow up with Chief.
So, you know, the individuals, it's possible that the individuals who were redirected, maybe their positions were attached to Community Affairs Division, but a majority of the individuals who helped with that worked out of our Major Events Division. Since then, and since we've stopped, obviously, the testing,
right,
those individuals who were specially assigned for that reason have returned to their normal positions. So the short answer would be yes, those monies would have been
okay.
returned.
I just want to make sure, because I know that's an important division. I wanted to make sure we had the funding back where it came from. Okay. And then just like when I asked with the fire department, I learned a lot. So you guys have this scientific investigation section.
Yes.
And it states that it's the only full-service forensic laboratory in the state.
That's
but
correct.
Yet you guys are servicing other counties, other departments. So I want to make sure, are you guys staffed, and are you, do you have adequate resources to do this?
So staffing is always an issue, especially in basically our scientific investigation section, or it's just more commonly referred to as crime lab. So our crime lab, you're correct, is the only one that's certified in the entire Pacific region. So we do handle cases not only from the other counties, but even from other, like Territory Samoa, Saipan. It is taxing on our resources, just quite honestly. Do we have enough resources? Yes. We can always use more staffing, but it's not as a result of not having the funding or positions. The challenge is filling those positions, because those individuals, for whatever reason, they'll come to the department, they'll get their training, and then they'll utilize that in other locations. One of the things, though, that we've done in order to help with that is we're one of the departments in the city that is piloting alternative work schedule. Hopefully to keep up the morale in the division and also to entice more people to come and apply to work for us. So in our scientific investigative section specifically, they're using a 4-10 schedule, hopefully not only for retention, but also to entice people to come. And we found that that's actually been pretty successful. We also are participating in a number of different pathway programs with various colleges throughout the city. We have a Pathways program with Honolulu Community College, intern program with Chaminade University, with West Oahu as well. And that's some of the feeder schools for internship programs and later for hires.
Do you have an idea about how much they get paid? And the reason I asked, we had the medical examiner with us, and it seemed, I mean, this is forensic, it's not a medical doctor position, but anytime it's forensics, it's pretty specific.
Correct.
So I remember the medical examiner shared his struggles in trying to find people to work with him, and their salaries were fairly high. What are these forensic laboratory, I'm not sure what their positions are called, but
So
what are their salaries?
Thank you for that question. So there's a number of different positions that fall under the scientific investigative section. I don't have the exact range for all the different positions. I can tell you that they're not as competitive as what they could probably receive in the private sector, but we do have individuals who come for things other than pay. But I'll get those ranges and provide that for you.
Okay. And just a couple more. I noticed on the support services there was about a $4 million increase in equipment, and I was just wondering what that $4 million increase was for. And this is on the page that says support services, and it's B221 in our binder.
Sorry, I'm being informed that those were for cars specifically.
Cars.
Yes.
What kind of cars?
Our patrol
Patrol
vehicles.
cars. Okay. Okay.
Our vehicle maintenance section.
$4 million though. How many cars is that?
They're about $90,000 per car, and that is for everything: the radio, the partition, the everything that comes with a patrol vehicle. So they're about $90,000, and we're looking at about
give or take 50 vehicles.
How often do you guys replace these vehicles?
We're on a replacement plan, so usually the average lifespan of a vehicle, like a patrol vehicle specifically, is anywhere between 8 to 10 years. But we try and keep them as long as we can. That doesn't mean that we don't use them for longer, but usually around that time, they're up for replacement, and then if we can keep them longer, we do.
Are these the vehicles that are also being maintained by the fire department? Because I asked them questions about their mechanical different. Who maintains these vehicles?
No, thank you for that. So we have our own vehicle maintenance section that does all of the maintenance for those types of vehicles. The vehicles specifically that the fire department helps to maintain are our larger vehicles assigned to like our major events division or our specialized services division or SWAT. So like our Bearcat, our command, like big truck that you see us taking to like community events.
Okay.
Yeah, they have the expertise to help maintain those vehicles.
But you guys have it for these patrol cars?
Yeah, we have our own maintenance section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, I had asked another department this, I think it was Corp Counsel. You know, we get lots of times in our EMLA committee in executive session, we have settlements, and there are a lot of cases that are connected to the department. So what is the police department doing to better train or educate? Because what I would like to see, I know we can't control everything, there are things that happen, but I would really like to mitigate things that could be prevented. What is the department doing to better train or educate the officers so that we can address that upfront, so we're not having to deal with settlements and loss of life and property and other things on the back end?
Definitely. Thank you for that question. So that is something that we, I don't want to say are concerned about, but that is top of mind for us. I can tell you that anytime, and usually a lot of these lawsuits or claims are as a result of a critical incident that occurs. And by definition in our policy, a critical incident is anytime that someone experiences some type of injury or death as a result of an action by an officer. So our policy requires that we do a critical incident review for every single one. And what we do is we look at policies, procedures, not only whether they're adequate, but also if there's changes that need to be made, if there's any training changes that need to be made. Obviously, tied into that is if there's any disciplinary action that needs to be taken as a result of that. So that happens for each and every single critical incident. Some of the other things that we do is we realize that de-escalation is another huge thing. So we've made recent efforts to increase the amount of education and training that we provide to our officers, not just in the academy, but even during annual recall training for our incumbents for de-escalation. We're looking at our use of force policy as an example to see, okay, we're really good at tracking the type of force that we use or the type of force that's used against our officer, but we're not really good at tracking how, when, and even if we're using de-escalation. So that's something that we're looking to change with our information technology division so that we can have more data and utilize that data to then adjust our training as needed. Are our officers taking advantage or using the training that we're giving them? If yes, okay, then let's keep that up or increase. If no, okay, we need to make some changes. So they're just some of the strategies that we're using to help address some of the issues that you just said.
I appreciate you sharing that, you know, and I've always been a supporter of our law enforcement, and I think definitely we had the discussion with the prosecuting attorneys, and amongst us we talked about just the sense of like society just being lawless, and it's very difficult. I know that what you guys do is not easy, and I'm excited I got to attend, you know, a recent graduation, so I'm excited that you guys are getting recruits. Put a plug out there for just parents in general to teach, because we know that it's hard for you guys to attract people to come to your department when when people out there just, they're not abiding. And so I know that there are freak instances where unfortunately something happened, but the more you can do upfront to prepare the officers, and hopefully the general public, working with our judicial, we can get it so that people aren't going to just be taking advantage of, you know, our police department and the decency of the officers. But the more you can do up front so that we're not later on having to settle large sums of money. And it's unfortunate across the, you know, on both ends. It's not a good situation. But I do want to thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for, you know, coming here and sharing with us, and we'll continue to work on getting the numbers down.
Okay,
thank you. Bye. And Aloha Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Council Chair Waters, followed by myself.
Thank you. Aloha, Chief.
Aloha, sir.
Good to see you. Hey, in 2022, there was an audit of HPD's overtime in which the auditor found ineffective management of overtime, including an unequal distribution of overtime hours amongst officers. Additionally, overtime cards, which document overtime requests and approval for payroll purposes, were found to be managed manually, increasing the risk of human error, abuse, and fraud. I noticed in your presentation in the budget books that overtime digitization submission process should be implemented department-wide in fiscal year 2025. Is that reflected in the budget? And
Yeah.
It
Sorry.
is? No, it is.
Thank you, Chair Waters. Yes, it is. So I'm pleased to say that we have implemented the digital overtime system. We are studying to see whether that implementation has had a direct correlation to either the reduction and or at the very least the equitable issuing of overtime. What I can tell you is that our records management and the ability for our commanders to be able to recall that information because of the digitization has increased tremendously. So therefore, what that does is, as an administration, we can hold our commanders accountable for the overtime that is being expended. And from a just operations standpoint, from our payroll time and attendance clerks to the individuals who are managing all of that information, they can see at a moment's notice, and you know what, we have an anomaly here, or why is this going up, or hey, you know what, you guys are doing really good, keep it up. So that tool is now available for us to use, and we'll see, hopefully, that translates into some of the thing that the audit pointed out.
Thank you very much. And I remember having this conversation about the audit years ago, and you were totally transparent and open about that. So the real idea there was to try to help and figure out how to make it better. You know, I completely understand, and I was listening downstairs when you're talking about overtime. I completely understand why it's necessary, and I got no problems with that. And the fact that you're trying to manage that better is great. But I have a quick question. Where does the funding come from to pay for overtime? Like what's, I know in your presentation you broke it down by activity, but do you take it from salaries, or do you take it from administration or support services? Where exactly does that money come from?
And correct me if I'm wrong. So we actually budget for it separate from, I mean, it's part of the same category, salaries category, but it's separate from the base salary. So what we do is we take an average of the 3 years preceding based on the amount that individuals work, and we take the average of that, and we project how much we actually think it's going to cost the department to be able to pay our officers overtime to do what we need to do to get the job done. So that's actually budgeted for. We have an allotment per quarter for each individual, I guess what is called in the budget activity, or what we call division or bureau, and we hold them to that. So if they go over, then we say what's going on, or if they're under, then great. But it's something we budget for, Chair.
Is that reflected in the budget books? And if not, would it be okay for us to actually put a line item for overtime, and then you tell us what to put in there?
I believe, Chair, that it's indicated by activity. So the overtime in each separate activity is indicated as overtime under that activity.
Is it in the budget books, though? I mean, I know the budget book breaks out by activity. But, you know, for example, we got the FTEs, salaries, current expenses, equipment, and then source of funds for each activity, but it doesn't actually have a line for overtime.
Okay. You know, let me check on that. I'm pretty sure we do, but let me check on the exact logistics of that, and allow me to get back to you on that.
Okay, that'd be great. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, you know, we had a hearing recently regarding HPD's communications in crisis situations. You know, the media was complaining that they weren't getting the information quick enough. Has there been any movement in that front?
Yes. So one of the things was we looked at internally how we handle responses. We've looked at different strategies. For example, selecting a dedicated spokesperson. We've looked at after hours calls. We've looked also at the information that we provide on social media, the mechanisms in place internally of when we get a call that we know is going to be of interest not only to the media but to the public. What do we do internally to make sure that that information is updated in a timely manner? So like the resolution had proposed, and I believe passed, right, sir? So those are all things that we've been looking at just since the beginning of the year, and I've even implemented some of those. So I'm hoping that if you follow us, if you don't, please follow us on our different social media. You've seen an increase in the amount of information. Also, even just putting people on camera. One of the things that we have coming up next week already, we have a class on Monday and then another on Friday, is training for our patrol lieutenants so that when the media comes to the scene, there's an expectation that they go to the scene and they provide initial information. So what that does is not only providing information to the media, providing information to the public, but it gets our face out there very quickly at the scene. So that training is coming up Monday, Friday next week, and we'll have additional of those. So those are just some of the things that we're doing to address some of the stuff that you've been talking about, especially in the resolution as well.
Appreciate that very much. Every now and then we'll get those types of complaints from the news media, so we'll stay on top of that. Let's see. Oh, this year's budget reflected, or does this year's budget reflect the 28 million transfer that we needed this fiscal year? I'm actually looking at your budget. It appears that the administrative services is now 47 million, so that covers what we had talked about last week. That resolution to move the 28 million from patrol to administrative services.
So that was an error last year, which thank you for the resolution was corrected, and this year so that the same error isn't made, that's already been adjusted for.
Fantastic. So we'll have that resolution on for full council and get that done. But I do see that it's reflected in here, so thank you very much. And then lastly, I haven't had a town hall meeting on crime in a while, mostly because of COVID, but I do recall whenever we did have town hall meetings, you guys came and the community really, really appreciates you guys. And I appreciate the hard work that you're doing and look forward to working with you on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We'll continue. Just let us know when the next one is and we'll make sure we're there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And next we have myself, and then we'll go on to the second round of questions. Thank you very much for being here. As I mentioned before, and I'm glad that it was a very successful event in my district in Pearl Ridge for celebrating safe communities this past weekend, and I always love going to that event. And I want to thank everyone, all the agencies, everyone that's involved in putting that on. With that, I'm really glad to hear about the digital conversion. I know that we were talking about that before and then finding certain documents for a long time. And so the investment of $400,000 for that conversion is going to be awesome. So I'm very excited. And I guess... and then my next question is relating to I guess that wasn't a question, but that was a comment. But my first question is relating to the annex that you've mentioned. I'm glad that it's available after almost more than 30 years.
That's correct, yes.
And I was wondering if as a new project, is there going to be a PIM marked for it? I haven't seen that yet.
Yes, so we're actually conducting the PIM right now. I believe maybe last week we had our first one, and we'll have, I believe, 2 or 3 more in the upcoming weeks.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. We'll note that. Next up, of course, you know that the council allotted for $100,000 per council district and $900,000. Really great outcome for one of my HPD districts, and I was just wondering how were the funds utilized for the community policing teams, and it could be general,
Okay.
But I know specifically for my Kalihi guys, but of course, more general would be good too.
Okay, no problem. So thank you for that question, and we appreciate the extra funds that were provided so that our community policing team, as Councilmember Kia Aina pointed out, is just super important. I mean, they do such tremendous and great work. So we really do appreciate the recognizing of that by this body and the support that you guys provide. So specifically for the CPT proviso funds, some of the things that we've provided is additional training to our community policing team officers, specifically in the area of crime prevention through environmental design, or CEPTED. That's something that's nationally recognized as a valid strategy in order to help to prevent crime within the community through design. So we sent a number of our community policing team officers to trainings which actually resulted in certification. What that then translates to is these individuals being able to go out into the community, work with businesses. I'm sure you've heard in the media recently of some of these smash and grab incidents, some of the commercial burglaries. These officers who are now trained and will continue to receive training utilizing the funds that were provided will be able to work with these community members and businesses to help take a look at their design and say, hey, you know what, I think you guys are becoming victims or are being targeted because of this or because of that. Change this, change that. Those are the types of things, trainings, that these funds have allowed our department to provide to our staff. Additionally, as far as equipment goes, I know we did for a number of different districts, not just yours, but others as well, is we're able to purchase things like Kiki ID machines and all of the different things so that when we do go out to these community events, like the one that you said occurred this Saturday, our officers are able to provide that service to the public. Also, the pop-up tents with logos on them so that we're readily identifiable. It provides some protection for our officers from the sun when they're going out and invites people to come in. So those are just some examples of some of the things we've used the proviso funds for.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, we've had our HPD out at the tents at our different housing complexes, as well as parks and everything. And I know it very much helps and very identifiable. And definitely the Kiki machines, we use that a lot in both D3 and especially D5. Okay, my next question is relating to the incentives for new hires. Is there any indication in your budget for incentives for new hires?
So in this fiscal year, and even in the upcoming fiscal year, since we've been working on this for a little while, the funding is going to be coming out of our administrative administrative bureau activity. So we have funds there to help to provide for that initiative that you're talking about. We are looking at the upcoming fiscal year to, if it goes through, and we anticipate about 120 recruits over the next fiscal year. So we anticipate probably spending through the end of the fiscal year, or actually through the end of the calendar year, about 150,000 for the initial. Then as we move forward, because there's going to be different phases, next fiscal year we anticipate about $1 million, and then it'll go on because it's a tiered effect. But in the probably next fiscal year, because now we know and we have a schedule of what we're going to spend, we'll be able to budget for those. But for now, it'll be able to come out of the fund that we know we'll be able to, we usually pay for our recruits anyways. So that's where the funding is going to come from.
Okay. Wait, but first it will come from the Administration Bureau.
That's correct.
Okay, and it will just be for this fiscal year.
That's correct.
That it will come out of from. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it will then move to what activity again?
So it'll probably still come out of the Administrative Bureau, but we're going to budget for it because now, since it's going to be, or it has been approved, we'll know exactly how much we're going to spend, and we can actually budget for it. Instead of just coming out of fund, we need this much from this fund.
But this isn't a new effort, right? Or is it going to be a new effort?
No, it is a new effort.
A new effort.
It's something that Chief Logan, when he came on board, that was one of his priorities, is to offer this type of incentive. So it's something that's new.
Okay.
completely new.
And of course, I know that when they're new hires, of course, they're going to have to go through the academy and everything, and go through training, and then are there incentives for placing them in certain districts? Because I know that we all need more patrol.
That's definitely part of our plan.
Okay.
So it'll be graduated, graduated steps. So when they come into the academy, when they meet certain benchmarks, to include when they're assigned to, and also stay for a certain period of time within, say, like a patrol district.
And may I ask, how is the incentives going to look like? Because if it's like $1 million, and so you said 120 recruits?
Yes, so we're looking to hire approximately 120 recruits in the next fiscal year. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
How's it going to be divided up? The $1 million.
So, that's something that we're still working on. I can tell you that what other departments do and what they offer is, so for example, Seattle offers up to $30,000 as an incentive, but they break that up as well. So they'll have different benchmarks, like I had said. So let's say it's usually definitely not as soon as they're hired. Let's say when they pass the academy, that would be a benchmark. When they pass their probation, that would be another benchmark. And then let's say when they're in the department for X number of years, that would be a benchmark. So not only is it a hiring incentive, it's almost actually even it is
like
a retention incentive. And then once you reach all those benchmarks, you get a certain X number of dollars.
Okay.
So what we're hoping to do is, besides attracting more people, it'll also keep them in the early years, because what we found is that if they come and they stay for a certain period of time, once you reach a certain period of time or point in your career, you're less likely to leave.
Okay.
So.
And then, which leads me to ask, I've asked other departments this relating to the efforts for the city administration and the city as a whole to lowering the vesting years to 5 years. Is that also going to be affecting or in effect for HPD?
So, I think that's something that's probably out of our control. That has more to do with like civil service rules.
I see.
So yeah, that's something we'll definitely probably be called to the table for and have to provide information on. So yeah, we'll provide input.
Thank you. My last topic is relating to the equipment. I know that you have about $5 million or so in operating, and for the vehicle purchases. And if we divide that up, we see that it meets or at the 60,000 mark for them to be added. For it to be added into the capital improvement projects. What is the reason why you have it in operating as opposed to the capital improvement projects funding?
Okay. Thank you for that question, and that is a very good question. But if I may, I defer to BFS on the reason for switching it from CIP to
Good to know. We'll note that to add to our questions for BFS.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to refer to this moment. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next we are in our next round of questions. Does anyone else have other questions? Okay, I had Councilmember Say, followed by Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
I think Deputy Chief, we're on the roll. I just wanted to thank two of your officers on the community team. That is Mr. Officer John Mao and Officer Terrence Kadekaru.
Who's the second one?
Terrence Kadekaru.
Okay.
The other question now is for my just education. Thank you very much for closing that attic, that event that was happening. What is a citation, may I ask, that you guys passed out to the 114 individuals?
It's my understanding that the citation that was issued was for...
just a warning or no fine?
I don't know if it was a warning. I think it was a citation. But I think it was for drinking in an unlicensed establishment.
Got it.
So I'm not sure what the status of that is, but that's something that we'd be working with our external partners on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last thought was, is it possible for our traffic control officers that deal with the parking lot, etc., can they do citations for expired vehicle safety checks?
What kind of?
Safety check.
Oh, safety checks.
Yeah, because as I was telling the members and the audience yesterday, as you drive around, you see more and more of these expired safety check on their fenders. So the thought would be if they could do the citation, and then that would be a civil fine, whereby you could come to the city and county of Honolulu. I don't know, or else do I have to go to the legislature to get their approval?
No, I don't think so. I'm glad that I'm hearing from you that that's a priority and concern for you. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that I take that back to our administration and command and have discussions with them on how they can improve that.
Well, in closing for me, Assistant Chief, I just feel disappointed that Hawaii and the country is becoming more and more lawlessness. And the values have changed so much. And, I like to go back when I was growing up. We respected you folks. We had the highest regards for law enforcement. But even the laws that we have, people are just breaking it left and right because there is no penalty or there is no teeth to it. And that's all I worry about for the future generations. If it becomes a norm that, you don't need, automobile insurance, 30% are not covered, and all of these little things that just adds up, which bothers me because then the thinking of the culture will be, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to be enforced. So I just share that with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Dos Santos Tam.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to actually follow up on your questions about the incentive program that's being proposed. Assistant Chief, you mentioned $1 million. You mentioned Seattle's done about 30,000 per officer. You mentioned the potential of hiring 120. If you do the math on all of these, if we stick with Seattle, so that's 33 new officers. That's improvement, but certainly nowhere near our puka that we have to fill. At 120 officers, it's 8,000 per officer. I mean, I don't know how much of an incentive that really is. So what this boils down to is if you could talk a little bit about maybe how this program might work, and then this begs the question of, do we need more incentives? Can we squeeze from somewhere else to make sure that this program is going to be successful? Are these incentives enough? I don't want to have to come back next year and find out that we still have the same persistent problems with our numbers here.
Sure. Councilmember, thank you for that question. So incentives, while it's new for us here in Honolulu, isn't a novel idea. It's something that departments across the nation have used to varying degrees of success. Some departments have seen where they offer a lot more than 30,000. There's actually one department, they're a relatively small department, but they actually offer $75,000. And, so at what point do you start to see value in the amount that you're offering? I think we need to start at some point, and the benchmark that we've used, or the kind of the amount that we've used, was based on similar sized cities in across the continent, and their either success or not success. So that's how we based, okay, how much should we give? As far as your numbers and doing the math, so please keep in mind that the monies isn't paid all up front. It'll be graduated, so there is a period of time in which the officer needs to stay employed with the department so that they will get the money. But the amount that I had said, about 1 million next fiscal year, that's based on the amount that we hire who would have met that benchmark at that point. In future fiscal years, when that same recruit or then officer meets another benchmark, then the monies that's part of this incentive program will then be expended at that point, but it may not be during the next fiscal year. So.
Yeah, no, I understand and appreciate that. I just want to make sure that if we're going to start this program,
sure, it's
over this
effective,
next several years, it is effective. So hopefully we can explore that.
Thank you for that point. And I think that's one of the things that we want to do is take a look, try see how it is. Because let's say we offer that amount and we see 15 or even 20% increase in our applicants and then people who we hire, then it's pretty safe to say, you know what, this is working. But if we offer that amount and we don't see an increase at all, or it stays flat, then I think that's something we need to take a look at. Okay, there's two options. We can either offer more, and hopefully that will be okay, Or maybe is it really, since it's not working, maybe we don't offer it again. So I think because of that variability in what we could do, we definitely don't want to just offer a bunch of money and not work. Then we'd be throwing away a bunch of money, yeah. So I think we have to start somewhere. I do completely agree with you that we need to evaluate that and then move from there.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. Members, any other questions? Thank you very much. We really appreciate you and your team for being here and taking the time to answer all of our questions. You are our last department for today and for the departmental budget briefings for this recessed meeting. With that, members, I do have an announcement. After today's State of the City address, we did post an agenda for the Committee on Budget on Tuesday, 12 p.m., following the State of the City to discuss budget and fiscal matters that were brought up during the State of the City. And I look forward to just discussing it all with you then. With that, there be no further business. This meeting is adjourned.